Chapter 44. Third Grandpa, you promised Yun, this time that you would give the black tiger to me as a gift when you catch it. The princess of Chu Yun and the old man sat on a green blanket. The blanket was flying in the air. Not only was it not slow, but it was also quite stable. On it was more than enough to sit or lie down, let alone stand. The princess of Chu Yun hugged the old man's arm like a little girl and acted coquettishly. The old man had a cynical look on his face. He patted the princess's little head and said, "Little Yun, such a big thing happened when you came out this time. Even the little guy from the Qin family died. If it wasn't for your mother pleading for mercy, you would have been locked up this time until you went to the Lianyun sect." I know that third grandpa loves Yun the most. He definitely won't do that. The princess of Chu Yun was not afraid. Instead, she smiled. "All right, you mischievous girl. This time, I want to see what's so strange about that powerful black tiger you mentioned. Once I catch it, third grandpa will play with it for a few days, then I'll let it be your spirit beast." The old man also had a playful look on his face. His name was Chu Guan, and he was ranked third in his generation. His temperament was more mischievous. This time, Chu Yun rushed home in a hurry and even let Qin Hai of the Qin family die in the Tiger Hill mountain range. This kind of thing was neither big nor small. The main thing was that according to Chu Hua and the others' description, the black tiger's uniqueness attracted the attention of the family. A spirit that had not advanced to the realm of demonic beasts could beat two foundation establishment cultivators away. The sound wave attack of the tiger's roar was so shocking. Vaguely, some people guessed that this black tiger was a mutated beast. Otherwise, even a tiger that had become a spirit would not have such terrifying strength. Therefore, after a discussion at home, they let Chu Guan, who was already a core formation cultivator, take Chu Yun to the mountain range again. At the same time, he subdued the black tiger and brought it back. Among the birds and beasts there was a very special situation, and that was mutation. The basis of mutation was in the bloodline. For example, the offspring born from the union of a vermilion bird and an eagle would have the bloodline of both the vermilion bird and the eagle. Perhaps the offspring would be born in the form of an eagle, and under some special circumstances or some kind of fortuitous encounter, the vermilion bird bloodline in the body would be stimulated, resulting in mutation. Perhaps he would become a vermilion bird, or perhaps he would become another type of living being. This state was called mutation. In addition to ordinary birds and beasts, there were many natural spiritual beasts in this world. They were creatures that were born with intelligence and were much stronger than other beasts. In terms of talent, ordinary species couldn't even catch up. This time, after hearing Chu Yun's story, the Chu family immediately had a guess. The black tiger could be the kind of mutated beast that was produced after a mutation, which was why it had such powerful strength. If they could catch it and nurture it, they might be able to make a powerful guardian spirit beast appear in the family. That was why a core formation expert was sent here. Along the way, the immortal cultivators they met were all rushing in the direction of the Tiger Hill mountain range. Some were going for the market that might be held, and some were going for the rare treasures that might exist in the forest. All of this made Tiger Hill, a mountain range that was originally not too eye-catching, into a mix of good and bad people for a time. It was very lively. However, regardless of whether they were looking for the black tiger, they were still looking for treasures. They didn't have much to gain. How could they know that the black tiger they were looking for had already left the mountain range decisively and was leading the vast migration team to the south quickly? Along the way, there was no lack of mountains and forests. The monkeys could pick all kinds of fruit. In addition, when they left the Monkey Valley, they had already brought a lot of fruits with them, so they didn't need to worry about food. In the sky, the vultures were the fastest, so it wasn't a problem for them to find food. As for the snakes, they also ate water plant. There was no lack of food for the insects underground. The south was said to be desolate because there was no human habitation. There was no lack of mountains and forests, and all kinds of birds and beasts could be found at will. Every time the wolves stopped to rest, a part of them would go out to look for prey. Therefore, on the migration path, food wasn't a problem that troubled them. On the road, there was a group of eagles in the sky guiding them. When they met a mountain, they crossed a mountain, and when they met a river, they crossed a river. They moved straight in the direction of the southern barbaric mountain range. During the urgent migration, time flashed by. The sun rose and the moon set, and day and night alternated. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, Chertion silently operated the tiger roar technique as he walked, healing the remaining injuries in his body. The injuries in his meridians and various parts of his body were recovering every day. In addition, when he rested at night, he took out the monkey spirit wine and drank a mouthful every time he cultivated. This made him discover another effect of the spirit wine. It could nourish the meridians and warm the whole body, which was extremely beneficial for the recovery of injuries. Therefore, after 3 days, his injuries were much better, and his strength was directly restored to 80%. According to Chertion's estimation, if this continued, it would only take another 3 days or so for his previous injuries to be completely healed. Ancient trees towered into the sky. The morning dew dotted the blooming flowers. The light of the morning sun shone through the branches and leaves, adding a trace of vitality to the gloomy mountain forest. In the early morning, the originally quiet mountain forest was broken by a burst of chaotic footsteps. If there was someone at this time, they would see a rather strange scene. Thousands of strong wolves were scouting the way in front. Some female wolves were leading their cubs behind. In the middle, there were groups of monkeys jumping around quietly. Behind them, there was a huge group of snakes. There were all kinds of venomous snakes. When people saw them, their scalps would go numb and they would shudder. In the sky, if one looked carefully, they would see thousands of goshawks constantly soaring and circling in the sky. The cries of the goshawks could be clearly heard. These races were supposed to fight to the death when they met, but here they were strangely strange. Not only were there no signs of fighting, but they were moving forward one by one. These animals' eyes would occasionally look at the incomparably large black tiger in the middle, revealing a trace of reverence. Roar! Just as they were moving forward rapidly, the high-pitched cry of an eagle pierced through the sky. Chertion looked up and saw a huge vulture gliding down quickly, bringing a strong gust of wind with it as it stood on the ground. King, this subordinate saw a mountain in front. There is a strange fog everywhere on the mountain, just like the white python's place. It is on the road that we are going to pass by. The Eagle King opened his mouth and revealed an unexpected news. What? The same fog above the mountain stream where the white python used to live, could it be miasma? Chertion's heart could not help but tighten. At the beginning of the migration, he guessed that this long road would not be smooth sailing. There would be considerable difficulties and obstacles in front of them. In the past, there was fog in the mountain stream where Susu lived. That was because the creatures living in the mountain stream were all poisonous snake. There were so many of them that the poisonous gas they breathed out was too large, intertwining and rising, forming a poisonous miasma. On the other hand, if there was miasma, it meant that there must be highly poisonous creatures nearby. Either there was a large number of them, or there was a peerless ferocious creature. Now, there was such a mountain in front of Eagle Kong. It was likely that there would be extraordinary danger on the mountain. Pondering, he looked to his side. There were tens of thousands of creatures around. If it was miasma, he had a way to deal with it, but most of the creatures that followed were ordinary beasts. If they rushed into the miasma, they would definitely die. The miasma was not scary. Chertion could shatter the miasma with the tiger roar and blow it away. However, the poisonous creatures in the mountain were a big trouble. Eagle Kong, do you see any other roads in the sky that can bypass that mountain? Chertion pondered for a moment and looked up at Eagle Kong. Yes, but it will take at least 5 more days of travel. The road is not easy to walk on. Eagle Kong had already seen it in the sky, so he answered quickly. 5 days? Di Shirtian's heart sank. The migration this time was too large, and he did not have the powerful ability to move so many creatures at once. It would take a month to reach the southern barbaric mountain range from here. During this month, it was very likely that some of these creatures would fall behind or die before reaching the destination. Eagle Kong, you lead the way. We will go directly through the mountain. After pondering for a moment, he decided that it was impractical to take a detour. They would go directly over the mountain, which would take at most half a day. At worst, they would have to fight with the poisonous creatures on the mountain. Howl! Eagle Kong soared into the sky and led the way in front. However, the huge team continued to move forward. Sure enough, it did not take long for a mountain to appear in front of them after leaving the forest. Speaking of which, this mountain was not very high, and the peak was not very steep. It was just relatively large. If they went straight through, it would take at least half a day to pass through this mountain. There were many trees on the mountain, but they were generally not very tall. In many places there was a strange thick fog. This fog, even under the illumination of the sun, was not penetrated by a trace of sunlight. The whole mountain, how to put it, had a rather strange feeling. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Different from ordinary mountains, this mountain seemed to have mountains, rivers, trees, and grass, but it was too quiet and lacked a kind of vitality. It gave people a rather oppressive feeling. Just from this feeling, one could know that this was definitely not a good mountain. Eagle Kong, this is the mountain you mentioned. Although he was very sure in his heart, Di Shirtian still asked. King, this is the place. Eagle Kong seemed to be very afraid of this mountain. With the support of my brothers, I finally rushed to the new book list. I won't say many words of thanks. Those behind me are about to catch up. Brothers, in order to protect your reputation, in order to explode other people's reputation, let's throw votes together. The more recommendations, the more I will repay with more chapters in the future. Please, everyone. Chapter 45. Looking carefully at the mountain in front of them, the miasma on the mountain wasn't enough to block the way forward. After all, although there was miasma, it didn't cover the entire mountain. As long as they avoided the miasma, they could still go through. What they really needed to pay attention to was the poisonous creatures that created the miasma. Baiwei Yuankong, Susu, the three of you immediately gather your tribes and don't scatter. Gather together before entering the mountain. Di Shirtian calmly ordered his subordinate. Yes, King. At this time, no one had any objections. Baiwei and the other two immediately began to gather their tribes and unite. In Kong, take your eagles and coordinate in the sky. If there are any changes, immediately use your advantage in the air to attack the enemy. Di Shirtian ordered In Kong. Among the 4 tribes, In Kong could be said to be the most relaxed. With their advantage in the air, they could easily fly over. Yes, King. In Kong took the group of eagles to soar into the sky and began to hover above Sakura and the others. Pairs of sharp eagle eyes began to observe every corner in large numbers. Enter the mountain! With that order, the majestic migration team once again began to move up the mountain. This mountain was actually called Centipede Mountain. As the name implied, there were a large number of centipedes on this mountain. Moreover, the centipedes here were more venomous and ferocious than ordinary centipedes. Any bird or beast on the mountain would be eaten by the centipedes as long as they stayed here. Over time, even ordinary birds and beasts knew how dangerous this mountain was and rarely dared to come close. In the end, it became a real centipede mountain. The centipedes were highly poisonous. When they breathed, the poisonous gas they exhaled condensed into clouds of miasma on the mountain. There wasn't much miasma at the moment, but after a few hundred years, the entire mountain would be shrouded in miasma. In a large cave at the top of the mountain, a gray poisonous gas was emitted from the cave. Looking through the poisonous gas, one could clearly see a huge centipede in front of them. This centipede was quite frightening. It was at least 10 meters long, and its body was connected by segments. Counting carefully, there were a total of 100 segments. Lying in the cave, it looked abnormally ferocious. It could be said to be a peerless poisonous creature. According to legend, centipedes only grew one segment a year. With the lifespan of a centipede, it was quite rare to grow to 30 segments. If it grew to 100 segments, it wouldn't be a spiritual beast with spiritual intelligence. This 100-segment centipede was able to grow to such a terrifying extent today because of a fortuitous encounter. A few decades ago, it had swallowed a purple fruit and slowly gained spiritual intelligence. The 100-jointed centipede lay in the cave, looking out of the cave. It seemed to be reminiscing. Ever since it gained sentience, it had become the king of the centipedes on the mountain. After that, it led a group of centipedes to eat small animals like rabbits and water deer. After eating them, it felt that it was very beneficial. It found that after eating and sleeping, its strength would increase. Moreover, the more it ate, the stronger the target and the faster its strength would increase. Therefore, it took a group of centipedes to hunt for various birds and beasts on the mountain. In just a few decades, its body increased to 100 segments. It became a 100-segment centipede. Considering the level of intelligence it possessed, it was impossible for it to ponder such profound questions. Therefore, it had no idea that the thing it had consumed was known as blood food among demonic cultivators. Blood food existed in the body, and although there was no special technique to cultivate and refine it, some of it would naturally be absorbed by the body as it slept. That was why the increase in strength happened. It didn't know that. It only felt that after it ate, it would increase its strength when it slept. Therefore, over the years, the centipedes multiplied rapidly, and their numbers became extremely large. It also ate almost everything that could be eaten on the mountain. At this time, staying in the cave, it couldn't help but miss the taste of blood food. Rustle, rustle! At this time, a relatively large centipede crawled into the cave. It wasn't as terrifying as the 100-segment centipede king, but it was still a meter long. After this centipede came in, it began to squeak. Hearing it squeak, the 100-segment centipede king's eyes immediately lit up, revealing a ferocious gleam of excitement. It squeaked a few times at the small centipede. Immediately, the centipede crawled out again. Its speed was quite fast. It didn't know how many legs it had, so it was difficult not to be fast. Patter, patter. Tion led the group of beasts up the mountain carefully, deliberately avoiding the miasma. Every one of them had their ears pricked up. Those ordinary groups seemed to be able to feel the oppressive aura around them as soon as they entered the mountain. Even the monkeys, who had been jumping and jumping all the time, didn't jump around at this time. Instead, they huddled together timidly. It's strange. We're already halfway up the mountain. Why hasn't anything happened yet? The atmosphere is a little different. At this time, Tion took the lead and walked at the front. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings quickly. As he walked forward step by step, the tigers might burst out from his body and waved in all directions, intending to warn the creatures in the mountain. If they were ordinary birds and beasts, they wouldn't dare to approach easily when they felt the strong tiger's might, the aura of the king of beasts. The mountain they were on now was unusual. He estimated that the creatures on the mountain were definitely not ordinary creatures. Therefore, he didn't let down his guard at all. Now, although they had walked all the way to the mountainside safely, it didn't mean that there was no danger. On the contrary, he felt that this seemed to be the calm before the storm. The oppressive aura reverberated around. Rustle, rustle, rustle! At this moment, suddenly, from all directions, there was a sound of a large number of strange things crawling on the ground, and it was quite dense. All around, the long weeds were swaying violently. The sound came from all directions. Ow! Tion looked up to the sky and let out a shocking tiger's roar. He looked around and was shocked by what he saw. On the ground, in all directions, there were centipedes densely packed. These centipedes were quite large. Each of them was as thick as a baby's arm. They were of different lengths, and there was an extremely large number of them. They rushed out from all directions and surrounded the migration team in an instant. Centipedes, it's actually centipedes? Tian's eyes shone with a cold light. These centipedes surrounded them but didn't attack immediately. They seemed to be waiting for something. Whoosh! Suddenly, in front of Tian, the densely packed centipedes suddenly opened up a path. 3 centipedes that were 1 to 2 meters long crawled out from the centipede. They walked to the front and glanced at the surrounded migration team in the middle. There was a murderous look in their eyes. They let out a roar. Immediately, countless centipedes charged toward Tian and the others like a tide. Ow! Tian roared. Immediately, the tribe behind him started to defend. Snakes and centipedes were natural enemies. Under Baisusu's lead, they blocked one side. Baiwa the Wave King let out a long howl and kept stomping on the centipedes with his claws. The apes also waved their claws and attacked. The eagles in the sky were the main force of the attack. They had the advantage in the sky and were the natural nemesis of poisonous creatures like the centipedes. In a short period of time, under the leadership of a few kings, they fought fiercely with the centipedes. However, looking at the tide of centipedes around them, they wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Junbuan, a 100-legged centipede, died but didn't fall down. The centipede's vitality was extremely tenacious. They also had a hard shell, which was their best protection. Hiss! The 3 giant centipedes in front of Tian moved their countless legs quickly on the ground and pounced toward Tian from 3 directions. These 3 centipedes were beginning to have spirituality. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before they would have spirituality and become spiritual beasts. They had more than 10 segments of their bodies. As long as they had 30 segments, they would become spiritual beasts. Ow! Seeing the 3 giant centipedes pouncing toward him without any fear, they were unusually ferocious. Their eyes were filled with endless ferocity. Instantly, the tiger's eyes turned cold. The pitch-black tail suddenly rose high, like a steel whip, faintly emitting a dark light. It whipped out in an instant. It directly whipped a giant centipede that was attacking him from the side. The place where it whipped happened to be the middle of the centipede. Bang! The outer shell of the centipede was very hard, but after all, they had yet to become a demon. The tail that Sakura pulled out was infused with demonic power, so one could imagine how powerful it was. The outer shell of the giant centipede exploded on the spot, and the slender body that had more than 10 segments was split into 2, falling to the ground and wriggling continuously. The 100-legged centipede died but didn't fall down. Even if it was broken into 2 segments, it didn't die immediately. The remaining 2 centipedes, one attacked from the front and the other from the right, bit toward his waist. Ow! Tian's eyes were cold. Looking at the centipedes in front of him, he didn't dodge. He was the king of beasts. There was no need for him to dodge a few giant centipedes. He opened his big tiger mouth and bit at the giant centipede that was pouncing toward him in the air. When the giant centipede saw Tian open his mouth wide, its speed in the air became a little faster. It rushed straight toward his mouth. It actually wanted to enter Tian's mouth and bite through his internal organs. Attacking from the inside of the enemy's body was indeed the centipede's specialty. Whoosh! The giant centipede's speed was very fast. Ordinary people's eyes couldn't track it at all. However, in Tian's eyes, there was no concealment to speak of. The giant centipede was about to enter his mouth, begging for votes. Chapter 46. Gotcha! The canines in Tian's mouth were incomparably sharp. When he bit down with all his might, even a stone would be crushed in an instant. The giant centipede's body just happened to pass through his mouth. The giant centipede thought that its speed was very fast and that it could enter Shirtian's stomach from his throat before he could react. However, Sakra's eyes were extremely sharp. He saw all of its intentions and actions. Just as it entered the tiger's mouth, he opened his mouth and instantly bit down. With a crisp sound, the front half of the centipede was bitten into pieces on the spot. Then, after a few swallowing, the whole centipede was chewed into pieces in his mouth. Gulp! With a sound, he swallowed it into his stomach. Although centipedes were poisonous creatures were often very nutritious. For example, the gallbladder of a snake. Centipedes could be used as medicine. This giant centipede could almost become a spirit beast's poison. After being chewed up and swallowed by Shirtian, it was simply a great supplement. It was no less than drinking the monkey spirit wine or eating a spirit gathering pill. Blood food was also the most direct way for a demon cultivator to increase their strength. For example, the 100-segment centipede on the Centipede Mountain was able to grow to 100 segments by eating a large amount of blood food. If it grew to 101st segment, it could break through to become a demon beast. It was obvious that blood food was also very important. Hiss! At this moment, the last giant centipede soared into the air. It opened its serrated fangs and bit down on Shirtian's waist. Pata! Shirtian didn't care at all. Instead, he looked coldly at the centipede's attack. When the centipede's waist was about to bite him, a crisp sound was heard. The sharp fangs were all broken. The one who was injured wasn't Shirtian. Instead of biting through the skin, the centipede's fangs were all broken. Roar! The Sakra let out a low roar. The purple king mark on his forehead pulsated unceasingly at this moment, bursting with the supreme majesty of the king of beasts. He opened his big mouth and sucked towards the giant centipede. In a split second, a gust of wind blew in front of him out of nowhere. The giant centipede was bound by a strange power and struggled to fall into the huge tiger's mouth. With a few cracking sounds, this giant centipede was once again like the previous one. It was chewed into pieces. It was swallowed into his stomach. Centipedes are great supplements. After eating 2 giant centipedes in a row, a wave of heat began to rise in his body. His tyrannical body had already absorbed the hidden power and essence of the centipede. Of the centipedes. Whoosh! Looking around, although he had already taken care of the 3 giant centipedes, there were too many of them. They were everywhere, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. It was as if the entire mountain had become a sea of centipedes. Although Baiwe and the rest led their people to fight back with all their might, under the tide-like attack of the centipedes, they suffered great losses. In the blink of an eye, each of the tribes had been bitten by the centipedes. Once bitten, the ordinary animals began to turn black all over. They fell to the ground. Clearly, the centipedes were highly poisonous. Seeing this situation, Shirtian didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath and a gust of wind blew in front of him. His already huge tiger body became even bigger in an instant. Roar! The air that he swallowed in his stomach was spat out in an instant. It rushed out of his throat in a special way. In an instant, a huge tiger roar broke the sky like a thunderclap. He didn't use sound waves. Just the power of the roar alone was enough to turn the tide of the battle. Bang, bang, bang! The entire mountain peak trembled violently in an instant. The countless centipedes in the surroundings felt as if a muffled thunder had suddenly sounded in their minds. On the spot, all the centipedes in the surroundings felt a buzzing sound in their head. Their consciousnesses were shaken, and their entire heads were shattered into pieces and turned into mush. Hiss! How could an ordinary centipede possibly survive under Shirtian's tyrannical tiger roar? It was wiped out in one fell swoop. However, just at this moment a roar suddenly came from the mountain. Within the roar, there was a strong fishy wind. In almost a blink of an eye, an incomparably huge centipede that was at least 10 meters long and as thick as an adult rushed down. It opened its mouth and spat out a poisonous wind towards Tion. The centipede's carapace was extremely smooth and as thin as a cicada's wing. It was like a sharp curved blade. Its body had 100 segments, which were equivalent to 100 sharp blades. Its entire body was crimson red, and the poisonous gas it exhaled carried a fiery aura. It was as if it was about to spit out fire. Roar! Tian's reaction wasn't slow. When the centipede queen pounced on him, he raised his tiger claw and swung it forward. In an instant, a pitch-black claw mark was aimed at the centipede queen's head. At the same time, the tiger roar didn't stop. Rings of pitch-black sound waves bombarded the centipede queen like a tidal wave. Bang, bang, bang! The centipede king's head was smashed by Sakra's claw. The sharp tiger claw actually scratched out a deep claw mark on its incomparably hard carapace. The sound waves of the tiger's roar unceasingly bombarded its body, causing its carapace to constantly emit a dull rumbling sound. The terrifying power was transmitted into its body. On the spot, the centipede queen's attack on Tion came to a halt. However, the centipede queen was a veteran. It stopped, but it wasn't too far away from Tion. Lying on the ground, its body suddenly became like a long whip. The lower half of its body instantly coiled towards Tion. The blades on the side of its body flashed with a cold light. With these sharp blades, as long as it coiled around its body, even if it was a king with intelligence, without any special abilities, they would be cut in half on the spot. Roar! Tion's tiger body shook, and thick black gas spurted out from countless pores all over his body, instantly enveloping his entire body completely. He took a deep breath, and his originally huge body once again became bigger. His two hind legs heavily stomped on the ground, and his huge tiger body soared into the air, leaping into the air. This leap was just right, just enough to avoid the slender body of the centipede queen, and let the body of the centipede queen sweep past Tion's body with a swoosh. Bang! Just as the centipede's body was about to fall, a huge tiger claw swooped down from the sky and pressed down on the centipede's tail. This claw contained a huge amount of demonic energy that Tion had poured into it. With one move, a terrifying power burst forth and pressed the centipede heavily onto the ground. Roar! Tion pressed down on the centipede's last section with one of his tiger claws, while the other tiger claw instantly swung up. Dense demonic energy spewed out, condensing into a huge black tiger claw in front of him. With a loud bang, it struck the last section of the centipede's body where it was connected to the front section. Hiss! How ferocious was Sakra's attack! Moreover, it landed on the joint of every segment of the centipede's body. Without the protection of the carapace, the last segment was forcefully torn apart from the centipede's entire body by the claw on the spot. The intense pain immediately caused the centipede to let out a shocking roar, and a bloody mist filled the air. This centipede queen was truly a ferocious creature. Although it had lost a section of its body suddenly turned around. A red light flashed beside Tion, and an intense pain came from his body. Looking closely, it turned out that the centipede queen had actually turned its body upside down, and in an instant, a huge wound was cut open on the left side of his back. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound and gushed down. In a short confrontation, in just a few breaths of time, the battle between Sakra and the centipede queen had already become incomparably fierce. Even though the time was short, the danger within it was not something that outsiders could understand. A huge wound appeared on Tion's body, and a section of the centipede queen's body had been cut off. Tragic, extremely tragic. The battle separated, and they stood facing each other from a distance. The surroundings were silent. A large number of centipedes had been killed by Tion's tiger roar. At this moment, Baiwe and the others had all retreated a distance away. They knew that the battle in front of them was not something that they could interfere in. What a powerful centipede! Its strength is probably at the peak of the demon realm, and it could break through to become a monster at any time. If not for the fact that it doesn't know how to use its monster power, I would be in danger today. Deschertien's eyes were cold. Looking at the centipede queen in front of him, he was also shocked. There was actually such a powerful existence that was about to become a monster on this mountain. It was truly terrifying. Hiss! The centipede queen's eyes were filled with ferocity. With a roar, it was about to charge over. However, at this moment, a red light suddenly appeared in the sky. This flowing light was originally going to fly through the sky, but it seemed to have noticed something unusual below. It actually paused in midair, and then appeared above the centipede mountain and stopped. When it stopped, one could see what that flowing light was. It was a middle-aged man wearing a Taoist robe with red edges. His face looked righteous. He was standing on a crimson sword. Even if the sword was stopped, one could still feel the rolling heat waves from the sword. There were faint flames rising on the sword. This man stood on the flying sword and saw Deschertien and the centipede queen's figures below. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He laughed loudly and said, "Luck, I'm really lucky. A red flame centipede. A mutated black tiger. 2 types of spirit beasts, both of which are extremely rare in the immortal cultivation world. Moreover, they are about to become monster beasts. If I capture them and cultivate them, I might have 2 more powerful spirit beasts guarding the mountain. I didn't find the celestial fragrance Fox King, but I found 2 spirit beasts first. Coincidentally, I have 2 beast taming collars. Today I'll capture you." After that, a light flashed in his hand, and 2 inconspicuous collars appeared. From where the light flashed, one could see that he was wearing a simple ring on his finger. The collars were taken out from the ring. Recommended book by a friend, Carrying a Tree with Me, author's name. Don't drink waterjong and did not farm, nor did he plant gold and silver. Instead, he planted trees. What he planted was not an ordinary tree, but a mysterious tree. Starting from planting trees, he walked all the way to the peak of life. Planting trees brought about a happy life. Planting trees made him a top-notch expert. Planting trees effortlessly and reaping a lot of benefits. Chapter 47. In the world of cultivators, storage bags were not the only things that could be used to store things. In fact, storage bags were not the lowest type. There were other types of storage treasures, such as storage rings, also known as universal rings. Containing the universe, the space inside was much larger than that of storage bag. This kind of Qianquan ring was very rare for ordinary people. Ordinary people couldn't have it at all. Firstly, the materials needed to refine it were too rare. Secondly, the people who knew how to refine it were even rarer. Therefore, most of the Qianquan rings were passed down from ancient times. Every universal ring could be said to be a symbol of status. Now, the middle-aged man in the air was wearing one. It was not hard to imagine that this person's status was definitely not simple. The middle-aged man held the 2 collars and looked down at Deschertien and the centipede queen. He tossed them lightly, and countless talismans emerged from the collars. The beast collars also began to expand. In the blink of an eye, they became as big as hula hoop. Hum! The 2 beast collars trembled slightly in the air and made a soft sound. A breathtaking and mysterious aura was emitted from the collars. It enveloped the people below. This ring again. What exactly is it? Why do I feel a very dangerous aura from it, as if it is my nemesis? When Deschertien saw the 2 beast collars above his head, his heart suddenly tightened. It was not the first time he had seen the beast collars. He had seen Jing Baichuan use them before. However, his tiger roar had shaken them down. He did not expect to see them here again. Although he did not know what this strange ring was, the feeling of threat was constantly beating in his heart. He stared at the beast collars. Every beast collars I use is one less. However, it was worth it to catch these 2 spiritual beasts. The red flame centipede's attributes are compatible with mine. If I train it well, it may be a great help to me in the future. Bind. The middle-aged man lightly pointed at the beast-controlling collars. In a split second, 2 beast-controlling collars could be seen flying towards the necks of Sakura and Centipede Queen respectively. During this process, the talismans on the beast-taming collars broke free from the collars and turned into long ropes made of talismans that quickly wrapped around the 2 spirit beasts. Once touched by the talisman, it would be impossible to escape. Swish! The beast-controlling collar that flew toward the Centipede King was very successful. Countless talismans instantly wrapped around its body, tightly binding it. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not break free. The beast-controlling collar also successfully wrapped around the Centipede King's neck. Instantly, the Centipede Queen seemed to have lost all its strength and collapsed to the ground. However, how could Chertion allow the strange hoop to be wrapped around his neck? First, he waved his tiger claw and condensed a pitch-black tiger claw in midair. He slammed it towards the beast collar, but it was quickly disintegrated by the strange talisman. It only made the beast collar pause for a moment. His momentum did not decrease at all. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Zhang Xian. Right in front of this seemingly irreversible situation. A ribbon appeared out of thin air and floated to the front of the beast collar. With a gentle shake, a 7-colored halo burst forth and swayed on the beast collar. Buzz! The ribbon seemed to contain boundless power, and it sent the collar flying backward on the spot. A strange fragrance floated in the air. A fragrant ribbon. It's the celestial fragrance Fox King. Seeing the ribbon appear, the middle-aged man was not shocked but delighted. He laughed and said, "Celestial fragrance Fox King, I've searched high and low for you, only to find you without any effort. I've been looking for you for so long, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Since you're here, what's the point of hiding?" After he finished speaking, a powerful divine sense instantly burst out from his body and frantically scanned the surroundings. Hee hee! A burst of clear and melodious laughter reverberated in the air. In front of the middle-aged man, the mysterious girl who had always been following behind Sakura suddenly appeared. Looking at the other party, she said, "Green Cloud Ox Nose, you chased me for 3 days and 3 nights. I was planning to sneak up on you once, but I didn't expect you to be so shameless as to attack a junior of the demon cultivators." This girl was a rare powerhouse of the demon clan, the celestial fragrance Fox King. Her strength was not inferior to a nascent soul cultivator at all. This time, she had planned to follow Chertion and secretly observe him for a while. She did not plan to reveal herself in front of Chertion, but she did not expect that the nascent soul old monster Qinyun would be unwilling to part with her and search for her nearby. She even let him run into Chertion and the others. It didn't matter that the Centipede Queen was taken away by Qinyun, but she could not watch Chertion be restrained by the beast collar. That was why she made a move at the last moment. When she made her move, she already knew that there would be no peace between her and Qinyun Ox Nose. "Haha, I've found you. A mere spiritual beast is nothing. Celestial fragrance Fox King, if you know what's good for you, hand over the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Box quickly. How can such a treasure be coveted by a demon like you?" Qinyun Ox Nose scolded loudly with a violent look on his face. "Humph, Qinyun Ox Nose, the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Box was originally found in the Godfall Abyss. Only the worthy can obtain it. I was the first one to obtain it. You chased after me for 3 whole months with the slogan of eliminating demons. You talk about righteousness, but you're just a hypocritical villain." The celestial fragrance Fox King snorted disdainfully and said, "The Imperial Heavenly Treasure Box is with me. If you have the ability, come and get it yourself. I'd like to see what ability you have to take the box from me." After saying that, the celestial fragrance Fox King waved the ribbon in her hand. Immediately, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth went wild. Rays of colorful light with a strange fragrance drifted towards Qin-Yun-Ok's nose. The fluttering of the ribbon seemed to be able to attract the spiritual energy in the surroundings. Even heaven and earth began to shake. Demonic woman, today is the day you die. Qin-Yun-Ok's nose formed a sword seal in his hand. The treasured sword under his feet flew up and trembled violently in front of him. The treasured sword split into two, then three. In the blink of an eye, there were thousands of identical treasured swords in the air. They quickly formed a sword wheel and blasted towards the celestial fragrance Fox King. Boom, boom, boom. For a moment there was a series of violent explosions in the air. Terrifying energy surged in all directions and landed on the ground, creating terrifying craters. Bang! A loud explosion shook the sky. The celestial fragrance Fox King's ribbon rolled back and her body turned into a colorful ray of light. She quickly fled into the distance and shouted, Qin-Yun-Ok's nose, your strength is only SOSO. It seems like you won't be able to take the Imperial Heavenly Treasure box. Demonic woman, don't run. Even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, this seat will catch up to you and have you executed by my Qin-Yun sword. When old monster Qin-Yun saw that the celestial fragrance Fox King had actually fled, his face was filled with rage. He didn't care about anything else. First, he put away the Beastmaster collar and the Centipede King that was trapped in it. Then, he stepped onto his flying sword and chased after the celestial fragrance Fox King. How could he care about Sakura, who was above and below? Huff! Looking at the two streaks of light that were rapidly disappearing, Di Shirtian let out a heavy breath. The pressure just now was simply too great. This unforeseen event had left him inexplicably shocked. He had personally witnessed the strength of these two people. During this period of time, the feeling of strength that had appeared because of his demonic energy had suddenly collapsed. In front of these two people just now, his strength was simply like a child's play. There was nothing to be proud of. Strength. It wasn't just ordinary strength. The terrifying deterrence that he had felt from the Beastmaster collar made him clearly understand that in front of a true expert, he was probably just a little thicker than an ant. But in the eyes of others, he was also a plate of meat that could be eaten at any time. Strength. I must become stronger. I don't want to feel as powerless as before. One day, I will become as strong as them. Di Shirtian silently swore in his heart. Silently, he encouraged his fighting spirit. His eyes burned as he looked into the distance, engraving the celestial fragrance Fox King in his heart. This was already the second time he had seen this mysterious woman with his own eyes. The last time, she had used him to protect the admirable treasure box. However, she had also given him the soul-gathering pill as a reward. It was precisely because of the soul-gathering pill that he had been able to obtain such strength in a short period of time. Therefore, although she had used him, she didn't hold any grudges. Instead, she had given him a chance to grow quickly. This was the second time, and she had actually saved him from Qin-Yun. If the celestial fragrance Fox King hadn't made a move, Di Shirtian could foresee that this time, he would have been captured like the Centipede Queen. Baiwe Susu Yuan Tian, Ing Kong, hurry up and leave this place. Use your fastest speed to cross this mountain. Di Shirtian only thought about it in his heart. However, he knew that now wasn't the time to think about such unrealistic things. The most important thing now was to quickly leave this place and enter the southern barbaric mountain range. As for strength, he would have it sooner or later. Whoosh! Baiwe and the others quickly reorganized their respective tribes. After being besieged by the centipede this time, every tribe had suffered considerable losses. However, their vitality hadn't been depleted. Under the leadership of their respective leaders, they all moved forward. Di Shirtian didn't leave immediately. Instead, he took out his storage bag and put away the centipede's body that he had torn off from the 100-jointed centipede. Then, he collected a large portion of the surrounding centipede's corpses. He filled the bag to the brim. The centipede's flesh was a great nourishment. Eating it to cultivate would increase one's vitality even more. Normally, there wouldn't be such an opportunity. How could he not take advantage of it? Moreover, if he ate the centipede's body part, his demonic power would increase greatly. This was because the centipede queen didn't know how to cultivate. Most of the power from its flesh and blood had fused into its flesh. There was a large amount of essence in its flesh and blood. Eating a piece was like eating the flesh of Tang Seng in the journey to the west. It was greatly nourishing. The competition for the new book rankings is very fierce. There are corpses all over the ground. Brothers, please throw your votes at me so that I can walk further on the new book rankings. Chapter 48. The Centipede Queen had 100 sections, and if one section was torn off by the Sakra, it was equivalent to taking 1% of the centipede's essence and power into his hands. In addition, the 3 large centipedes from before were also about to break through to become spirit beasts, so the flesh and blood in their bodies were also greatly nourished. After eating them, the Sakra's body was still warm, and hot air was circulating in his internal organs. I can't keep the blood food for too long, or the power inside will dissipate. Luckily, I have a storage bag, so I can keep the blood food fresh. That said, I still need to eat it as soon as possible. After we cross this mountain, I'll find a hidden place to rest for now and let by you and the others rest. I'll eat the centipede queen's flesh and absorb the essence and power inside. Di Shirtian quickly put the centipedes around him into his storage bag. Only when he could take no more did he hurry towards the migration team. With the centipede queen on the centipede mountain, the other animals had no space to live at all. Now that most of the centipedes had been killed by Di Shirtian's roar, and the centipede queen had been taken away by Qin Yun, there was no longer anything that could threaten the migration team on the centipede mountain at the moment. Their journey was smooth as they crossed the mountain. Di Shirtian used his great control over his body to shrink the wounds caused by the centipede queen. Coupled with the nourishment of his demon force around the wounds, it prevented him from bleeding profusely. At the moment, the blood on the wounds had already coagulated. With his ability, there were no major problems now. After passing through the centipede mountain, they walked for a while and found a valley with a water source. The migration team stopped in the valley to rest. Afterwards, they ate some of the prey they had caught and the centipede meat in their storage bags. Most of the animals began to lie down in the valley and close their eyes to rest. Around the valley, there were naturally strong and smart clansmen of various clans guarding it. Not even the slightest movement could escape their eyes. Di Shirtian also used his demonic power to dig out a huge cave in the valley. The Wolf King Bai Yu and the Ape King Yuan Tian guarded the entrance of the cave. He entered the cave and lay down, placing his storage bag in front of him. The centipede queen's flesh contains a large amount of essence. If I eat it, I will definitely be able to quickly recover from my original injuries. The flesh contains 1% of the centipede queen's power. If I absorb it, I might even be able to advance further. Di Shirtian had already temporarily buried the matter of the heavenly fragrance fox monarch and Qin Yun in the depths of his mind. So what if he knew? To him, the two of them were experts whom he admired like mountains. No matter how much he thought about it, it was impossible for his strength to increase out of thin air. It was not common for a pie to fall from the sky. Self-improvement. Only self-improvement was the only way to go about it. Self-improvement was the only way to grasp the trajectory of one's destiny and change the trajectory of the living beings around them. Seeing the heavenly fragrance fox monarch and the others, Di Shirtian's first thought was not fear, but a strong fighting spirit. He told himself that one day he would be as strong as them, or even stronger than them. As long as his fighting spirit was unwavering, there was nothing in this world that could stop him from becoming stronger. Swoosh! The storage bag flashed, and the corpse of a giant centipede that had been killed by the shock appeared in front of him. Beside it was a huge chunk of the centipede's body. This was the chunk of flesh from the centipede queen. The centipede queen's carapace was relatively tough, but the flesh wrapped in the carapace was relatively tender. Crunch! Tion did not hesitate. He first swallowed the corpse of the last giant centipede. His sharp canine teeth completely ignored the carapace and crushed it. In the blink of an eye, the centipede was chewed into minced meat. Such a nutritious centipede, in his mouth, not only did it not have a fishy taste, it even had a unique fragrance. The texture was extraordinarily good. Gulp! After swallowing the giant centipede into his stomach, his powerful body began to digest it. Waves of heat were emitted from his body. It was warm, and the energy in his body faintly produced a sense of excitement. However, Tion did not immediately enter into cultivation. Instead, he grabbed the carapace of the centipede queen and used his tiger claws to dig out the centipede flesh from the carapace. The centipede queen's carapace was hard, and the giant centipede's carapace could not be compared to it. Even Tion could not swallow it into his stomach. Eating the flesh inside was enough. On the contrary, it was a rather good material for refining weapons. Crunch! After swallowing the centipede queen's flesh and chewing, it tasted 100 times sweeter and more fragrant than the centipede from before. It made one want to eat more. In no time, he swallowed the centipede queen's flesh into his stomach. Boom! The centipede queen was only a step away from becoming a demonic beast. However, it did not know how to cultivate demonic chi. All of its strength was contained within its body. When it swallowed this piece of flesh, the enormous amount of spiritual essence hidden within immediately began to erupt. Waves of ferocious heat were like angry seawater, rapidly surging within its body and gushing out. It was like a blowout. What powerful essence chi! When Tion felt it, he was not surprised but delighted. He quickly closed his eyes and began to circulate the tiger roar technique. He drove the enormous amount of essence chi in his body to circulate in all parts of his body, quickly passing through his meridians. To monster cultivators, blood was one of the most nourishing things in the world. Essence chi was the source of energy in a living creature's body. It was the easiest to absorb and had great benefits to the person who absorbed it. A portion of the essence chi that surged out was driven by the tiger roar technique to circulate in his meridians. A portion of it quickly fused into his flesh and blood. Every time a trace of it fused into his body, the strength of his body increased by a little. At this moment, the countless pores all over his body opened up. Traces of black monster chi continuously gushed out of the pores and condensed into a monster mist in his body. It enveloped his entire body. In the monster mist, Tion's body began to change again. What gushed out of his pores was not only monster chi, but also the impurities in his body. They were being expelled bit by bit. Every time a part of it was expelled, his body became stronger. Every inch of his body hid a huge amount of power, and his control of his body became more proficient. The fur on the outside was also constantly strengthening. It was one body, and its defensive power naturally became stronger. Huff, huff. He exhaled a puff of turbid air from his mouth, causing the monster mist around him to surge. This time, the essence chi hidden in the flesh and blood of the centipede queen and the 3 giant centipedes was really huge beyond imagination. When Tion started to absorb it, a huge amount of essence chi gushed out of his body one after another. Under such stimulation, the tiger roar technique started to circulate in his meridians at a speed that had never been seen before. With the addition of the essence chi, the monster chi in his meridians began to grow at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. It was increasing almost every moment. Essence chi was the most essential power in a living creature's body. When this huge amount of essence chi was integrated into his body, It also quickly healed the damage that he had suffered before. The damage to his meridians was quickly healed, and they became tougher than before. The monster chi in his body continued to grow under the support of the huge amount of essence chi. That night, Wolf King Bai Yu and the others kept their eyes wide open as they guarded the entrance of the cave. They were afraid that something would disturb the king in the cave. After witnessing Di Shirtian's strength, the four leaders had already completely submitted to him from the bottom of their hearts. It could be said that they were extremely respectful. They really knew their place and treated Di Shirtian as the real king. Naturally, they would not let anything happen to disturb this place. When they did things, they did their best. At this moment, the scene in the cave suddenly changed. Outside, the dense black demonic fog that enveloped the Sakra suddenly started to roll violently. In an instant, it suddenly expanded and hit the surrounding mountain walls in an instant. Boom! This impact was unusually fierce. It directly caused the entire cave to shake violently a few times. Booming sounds could be heard in the cave. Hum hum hum! This was not the end. The monster mist that burst out did not dissipate. Instead, it quickly gathered and condensed into pitch-black crescent-shaped light blades in the surroundings. The light blades trembled slightly and emitted waves of soft hums. Cold light flickered on the light blades and they quickly danced up and down in the surroundings, drawing out streaks of sharp cold light. There were a total of 10 light blades like this. They flew up and down around Di Shirtian, displaying their sharp attack power. Disperse! Di Shirtian shouted in his heart. The 10 light blades trembled violently and quickly dispersed. In the blink of an eye, they once again turned into balls of monster mist and quickly entered his body through the pores on his body. Good, good, good. I didn't think that the Centipede King would really help me this time. A piece of flesh allowed my monster chi to directly break through to the late third layer. It was vigorous and unending, almost filling my meridians to the brim. It also allowed me to have an even stronger control over my monster chi. I comprehended the attack method of the monster mist blade. My strength increased greatly. With this, I have even more confidence that I can make a name for myself in the southern barbaric mountain range. It's even more beneficial for me to accumulate strength. Feeling the surging monster chi in his body, Di Shirtian almost had an impulse to roar towards the sky. The benefits he obtained from eating the Centipede King's meat this time were truly too shocking. First of all, not only did it allow his body to become even more powerful than before, the injuries that he originally suffered within his body had now been completely healed. There was not a trace of hidden danger. Moreover, the monster chi in his entire body had increased by a large amount. The enormous monster chi had practically filled all the meridians in his body. Now, he could almost feel the tyrannical strength within his body at all times. He had a feeling that if he were to fight with the Centipede King again, he would be completely able to destroy it without being injured. Those with votes, please help me out and throw in a few votes. Chapter 49. If it was said that he was in the early stage of the third layer when all the meridians in his body were connected, then now, he had already broken through to the late stage of the third layer. When all the meridians in his body were filled to the brim with demonic energy, he would have reached the peak of the third layer. At that time, if he wanted to take another step forward, he would need to open up a demonic dwelling. Opening up a demonic dwelling was equivalent to advancing into a demonic beast. At that time, whether it was demonic energy or his own strength, they would all receive a huge leap in improvement. This kind of improvement was the difference between heaven and earth. It could be said that the current Di Shirtian had already taken a huge step towards becoming a demonic beast. What was truly joyous was that after his breakthrough, he could control the demonic energy in his body with even greater ease. Thus, he suddenly had a strange thought. The sharp blades on the edge of the Queen Centipede's carapace were indeed quite frightening. They were incomparably sharp. Even with his strong tiger body, after coming into contact with them, a huge wound would instantly appear on his body. This kind of attack power was absolutely frightening to the point of sharpness. If not for the fact that his strength was not weak, and that he knew how to use demonic energy better than the Queen Centipede, he was afraid that he would be at a disadvantage when fighting with the Queen Centipede. If he was slightly careless, he could possibly be instantly dismembered by those sharp blades. Thus, he was thinking whether or not the demonic mist outside his body could also be converted from defense to offense. Once de Chertion thought of this possibility, he first simulated every step in his mind to see if he could condense it. After thinking it through, he used his control over the demonic mist to compress it bit by bit towards the center. Compress, compress, and compress again. Compressing a large amount of demonic energy towards the same place would cause the originally mist-like demonic energy to begin to condense into a solid substance. Then, under his control, it would form streaks of sharp blades of light. Each of these blades of light possessed an attack power that was not at all as strong as the blades beside the Queen Centipede. The attacks of these blades of light were enough to instantly kill the 2 Foundation establishment cultivators he had encountered in the past. Because they were formed from demonic energy, de Chertion directly named this attack method Demonic Mist Blade. With the fiendish Mist Blade, I will have another method of attack in the future. He no longer needed to be like before, where he didn't even have the means to attack when he encountered an enemy. The Tiger Roar sound wave is powerful, but it also consumes a lot of demonic energy. With my strength, using it 10 times in a row would exhaust all my demonic energy. Now that I have the demonic mist blade, not only is its attack power strong, it also consumes less demonic energy than the Tiger Roar sound wave. Socrates stood up, and with a shake of his body, a pitch-black demonic aura gushed out, forming a dense demonic fog. The demonic fog rolled violently and quickly condensed. In the blink of an eye, it once again formed 10 pitch-black demonic fog blade. Hum! One of the demon mist blades issued a soft cry. Then, a pitch-black blade light was drawn in the air. Then, it bombarded the stone wall in front of them. Poof! The demonic mist blade simply ignored the toughness of the stone wall and easily pierced through it. Moreover, it left behind a terrifying blade mark on the stone wall that was at least several meters deep. Furthermore, the demonic mist blade did not dissipate. Instead, it flew out of the stone wall and returned to de Chertion's side. It continued to fly up and down. It appeared to be quite agile. One could already see how powerful it was from its attack power. After controlling the demon mist blade to fly around him for a while, de Chertion was somewhat dissatisfied. There are still some flaws. From forming the demon mist to condensing the demon mist blade, it takes a total of 4 to 5 seconds. This time is too long. In battle, even a single second is enough to change the tide of the battle. I have to shorten this time. It would be best if I could condense it with just a thought. At that time, this demon mist blade would become a true offensive weapon. De Chertion pondered in his heart. This flaw had to be overcome. After all, in battle, the enemy would not wait for you to condense the demon mist blade. He was afraid that before you could condense the demon mist blade, the enemy's attack would have already arrived. This would be an extremely huge flaw. However, knowing this was one thing. If he wanted to shorten this time, he would need to practice again and again. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Only by practicing this step directly to the bone, with just a thought, the body would be able to condense the demon mist blade as if it was a conditioned reflex. At that time, this attack method would truly begin to be perfected. According to his plan, this demon mist blade method still had considerable potential to be unearthed in the future. Right now, he could only condense 10 blades. When he made a breakthrough in the future, he might be able to condense 100, 1,000, or even in the end, with just a thought, tens of thousands of powerful light blades would appear outside his body. That kind of attack was truly powerful. This time, the test caused a bit of a commotion. Bai Yu, Ing Kong, and the others all entered the cave together. When they saw the demon mist blade dancing around Di Shirtian's body, their eyes were filled with the power of their king. King! Bai Yu and the others stood in front of Di Shirtian and bowed respectfully. Whoosh! He quickly dispersed the demon mist blade back into demon mist and absorbed it back into his body. Looking at the four subordinates in front of him, he also noticed the reverence and longing in their eyes. He nodded and said, "As long as you do your jobs well, after we settle down in the southern barbaric mountain range, I will slowly teach you some things. At that time, you will also have a powerful force like this king." The best way to subdue people was to use a combination of kindness and authority. This was something he had thought about a long time ago. His own strength wasn't considered strong. Only when the people around him became strong together and formed a force could it be considered truly strong. Therefore, Di Shirtian never planned to hide anything from Bai Yu and the others. Teaching them cultivation was something that would happen sooner or later. "Thank you, King." Bai Yu and the others were overjoyed and bowed respectfully together. "All right, now isn't the time to talk about this. We're still on the path of migration. This time, we've already encountered a centipede spirit. We don't know how many dangers lie ahead. We can't be careless in the slightest. Quickly go out and let your tribe eat their fill. Then, we'll continue to advance towards the southern barbaric mountain range according to the arrangement we made at the beginning. We must reach our destination as soon as possible." Right now, Di Shirtian couldn't wait to find a place to settle down. After breaking through to the late stage of the third layer, he only needed a period of time to consolidate. With the assistance of the spirit-gathering pills and monkey wine, he would be able to break through to the peak stage very quickly. At that time, he would open up the demon palace in one go and become a demon beast. Then, he would be able to establish a foothold in the southern barbaric mountain range. "Yes, King." Bai Yu and the others left the cave with excited hearts. However, Di Shirtian didn't relax. Instead, he began to practice the demon mist blade that he had figured out. Time after time, he would condense, disintegrate, condense, and disintegrate again. He continuously practiced this action in a cycle. Actually, if the heavenly incense fox monarch saw his current state, she would probably instantly cry out in surprise. Because, in the demon clan, being able to research this kind of attack method on their own when they were at his level was an extremely inconceivable thing. Moreover, even if others had the same level of strength as him, they would absolutely be unable to research this kind of demon mist blade. Even if they could, they wouldn't be able to do it. There was no other reason. Other than Di Shirtian, other demon clans wouldn't be able to have such precise control. It far exceeded the spiritual power and demon consciousness of ordinary demons. Only with powerful spiritual power could he have the ability to compress the demon mist, compress it again to form a light blade. Moreover, he could control it to launch an attack. Just this alone was already a huge gap that ordinary demon clans couldn't cross. Therefore, the demon mist blade was definitely Di Shirtian's unique technique at this time. Time passed by as he practiced again and again. In the valley, after all the tribes had finished eating, Di Shirtian also stopped practicing. He led the huge migration team and continued to advance towards the southern barbaric mountain under the illumination of the morning sun. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves to scout ahead. The Ape clan was in the middle, and the Snake clan was at the back. In the sky, a group of eagles was constantly circling, occasionally letting out eagle cries to inform the front of the situation and to act as the migration team's eyes. The combination was just right. Along the way, they hurried along at their fastest speed. They had just passed through the Centipede Mountain, and there was no existence stronger than the Centipede Mountain nearby. As long as they felt the domineering tiger aura that Di Shirtian deliberately emitted, all the ferocious beasts would avoid him early on. While walking, Shirtian's mind was constantly thinking about problems. Some were how to perfect the demon mistblade, and some were how to assemble the huge jigsaw puzzle on the Imperial treasure box. His body was walking, but his mind was on these problems. He didn't waste any time. He had already found some clues about the Imperial treasure box. That jigsaw puzzle, as it was perfected bit by bit, had already begun to reveal some clues. Jigsaw puzzles were like this. The more difficult it was at the front, but as long as a certain part was put together, it was equivalent to finding the key to the puzzle. Around this key, he could complete the jigsaw puzzle and finally open the treasure box. Now, Shirtian was simulating in his mind. After he had some results, when he arrived at the southern barbaric mountain range and settled down, he could begin to solve the jigsaw puzzle and uncover the secret of the treasure box. In the mountain forest, they ate the wind and ate the dew. When the sun rose, they left, and when the sun set, they stopped to rest. They didn't waste any time. With the guidance of the group of eagles, they crossed mountains and rivers. After half a month, they had already covered most of the distance. Along the way, they encountered many accidents, but with Shirtian's help, they were resolved one by one. Roar! However, just as the journey was smooth, Eagle Kong suddenly let out a high-pitched roar in the sky as a warning. Eagle Kong's huge body circled a few times in the air. With a swoosh, it dove down toward Shirtian's location. Brothers, I'm rushing up the new book list. This is the last week. After this week, I'll be off the list next week. I hope everyone can help and give me recommendations. Let's see how far I can go on the new book list. Chapter 50. Something's happening up ahead. As soon as he heard Kong's cry, Shirtian, who was below, heard a thump in his ears. He knew that something must have happened in front. Otherwise, it was only in the afternoon and there was still a long time before evening, so he couldn't have easily descended from the sky. On the other hand, such an abnormal situation, needless to say, must mean that something had happened in front. Sure enough, Kong descended from the sky and said, "King, there are 2 Xiaoxian cultivators in front of you that you have told us about." His words shocked people to death. As soon as he opened his mouth, Sakura was startled. He had a deep impression of immortal cultivators. The ones he had met in the Tiger Hill mountain range were not very powerful. Whether it was the Princess of Chuyun, Zheng Baichuan, or Li Xiangqin, they were just small cultivators who had just started cultivating. Even if they had powerful backgrounds, they had very little experience in fighting. That was why they seemed so weak under his attack. Even if they were cultivators in the late stage of qi refining, Shirtian wouldn't have been able to deal with them so easily. As for the 2 Foundation establishment cultivators from the Li family, they were scared away by the overbearing sound waves of the tiger's roar. If they were to really fight, he would not be able to defend himself at all. It was because he knew that he was still too weak to fight against the deep-rooted, immortal cultivators. That was why he led his men to migrate. At this time, he didn't want to fight against cultivators. Shirtian's eyes narrowed when he heard that there were cultivators up ahead. He asked, "Kong, why are there cultivators here? Where are they?" "Your Majesty, I only saw 2 cultivators fighting a bull. The bull was covered in blood. I'm afraid it can't hold on any longer. They're not far ahead." Kong spread his wings and pointed to the front. "Lead the way. We'll go and take a look. The other clans will stay here for now. Bai We Susu, you 3 take care of your clans." Shirtian's eyes lit up as he gave the order on the spot. "Howl!" Kong raised his head and let out a high-pitched cry. His huge wings flapped quickly, creating a gust of wind that blew the leaves on the ground everywhere. His huge body rushed into the clouds and flew forward quickly. Shirtian stomped heavily on the ground with his 2 hind legs. His burly tiger body leaped forward quickly. He ran forward with a speed that was not inferior to Kong's. The cultivators are fighting a bull. A bull that can make a cultivator fight is definitely not an ordinary one. Maybe it's a spiritual beast with spirituality. I have to go and take a look. If possible, I can save the bull at the right time. Maybe I can take another subordinate. As Sakura ran forward, he was thinking quickly in his mind. He wanted to increase his strength. This strength referred not only to his own strength, but also to the strength of the people around him. If there was a chance, he definitely wouldn't mind letting a few more spiritual beasts like Baiyu and the others who had their own spirituality under his body. This could be regarded as a foundation. Moreover, he was destined to be enemies with the immortal cultivators. If he had the chance to kill a few immortal cultivators, he might be able to collect more treasures. He was quite interested in every item of the immortal cultivators. Killing Li Xiangchen gave him a storage bag and a lot of treasures. If there was a chance to kill a cultivator, he would not let it go. Hua! Under the lead of Inkong, it didn't take long for Sakura to pass through a mountain forest, only to hear that in a valley there was a burst of fierce fighting sounds that kept ringing out. There were even cow cries echoing in the valley. It's here. When Sakura heard this, he knew that the place Inkong was talking about should be here. He didn't say much and used his speed to quickly pass through the entrance of the valley. After entering the valley, he quickly scanned the surroundings and found a huge rock. He jumped over and hid his body behind the rock. He controlled his aura so that it did not leak out. After doing this, he poked his head out and looked into the valley. In the valley, the first thing that caught his eyes were the two cultivators. One of them left a deep impression on him. That person was quite young, about 20 years old. He was dressed in snow-white clothes and carried an ancient sword on his back. This ancient sword was very strange. It was crystal clear and seemed to be made of some strange crystal. On the hilt there was a divine dragon's head. It was vivid and lifelike. Just by looking at it, one could feel a boundless deterrence from it. On top of it there were mysterious lines. These lines formed many profound talismans. It added to the mysterious aura of the ancient sword. The combination of the man and the sword created an indescribable harmony and charm. The sword was extraordinary, and so was the man. To say that this young man looked like Pan Un would be demeaning. In this world, there were very few men who could look like him. He was handsome, but not seductive. He had the ability to make women fall in love with him as soon as they saw him. He was extraordinarily handsome and elegant. However, he did not have the natural arrogance that many cultivators would have. Instead, he had a very calm expression, and a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness surrounded him. It was as if he represented the righteous path of heaven and earth. This feeling was very strange and unfathomable. It was as if no matter where he went, people could see that he was the main character. He was born to attract people's eyes and attention. His cultivation was not very high. He was only in the 10th layer of Qi refinement, the late stage of Qi refinement. The other person was dressed in green. Although he was also handsome, the light on him could not be compared to the young man next to him. It was as if he was born to serve as a foil to the young man. He was fighting with a red bison. The bison's body was already covered with wounds of various sizes. Blood splattered on the ground, dyeing a large patch of the ground red. It was breathing heavily from its nose, spitting out little sparks. Its red eyes were staring at the two people in front of it fiercely. There was also a strong hatred in its eyes. It was as if it hated the two people in front of it so much that it could not live under the same sky. Who is this cultivator? Di Shirtian looked at the young man in white and was shocked. He suddenly had a feeling that this person was not simple in the cultivation world. Moreover, it seemed that he would be entangled with this person in the future. It was as if he would be his old enemy. Looking behind the Red Bull, he saw a calf that was much smaller than the Red Bull lying coldly on the ground. On its throat, a sharp sword mark was clearly visible. Blood had formed a blood pool on the ground. There was no trace of life. Obviously, it was already dead. From the looks of it, This calf should be the Red Bull's child, and it was killed by the two cultivators in front of them. Thinking about it this way, it was no wonder that its eyes were filled with deep hatred and ferocity. Even if its body was covered with wounds, it still stared at the two cultivators. How? The Red Bull's eyes were red. Suddenly, two pillars of fire shot out from its nose. Like two fire snakes, they quickly rolled towards the green-robed cultivator in front of it. The pillars of fire whistled past, causing the temperature in the air to rise sharply. Evil beast, why haven't you been killed yet? Black Ice Talisman. When the green-robed cultivator saw the two pillars of fire, his expression changed. He flipped his hand and two spirit talismans appeared. He poured his spiritual power into the talismans. Suddenly, the spirit talismans flashed and turned into two clouds of ice mist in front of him. They collided with the two pillars of fire. After a fierce rumble, the pillars of fire melted the ice mist and quickly rolled towards the green-robed cultivator. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Seeing this, the green-robed cultivator's expression couldn't help but change. He quickly shouted, "Eldest senior brother, this fire bull is so powerful. I can't hold it anymore. Eldest senior brother, please kill this mad bull. It will help increase the power of your demon-slaying sword." As he spoke, he quickly took out a few spirit talismans and stuck them on his body. Schwa. Layers of golden light emerged from his body. In the blink of an eye, it covered his entire body, making him look like a golden man. He had used a Vajra talisman. When the pillars of fire hit him, they roared and shook the golden light shield around him violently. Moreover, the pillars of fire would explode and shatter, blowing away the Vajra talisman on the spot. Clang. At this time, the white-robed youth saw this and shook his head slightly. He extended his right hand and lightly pointed at the ancient sword on his back. Suddenly, there was a clear sound of a sword ringing. The ancient sword was unsheathed and swung at the two pillars of fire. Immediately, a sword light appeared in front of the pillars of fire and extinguished them in the blink of an eye. Junior brotherling, you need to cultivate diligently in the future. A fire bull that hasn't even become a monster beast was able to force you into such a dangerous situation. If this were to be seen by others, it would bring shame to our high heaven sect's name. If you encounter a monster beast, you have to kill it. The white-robed youth had a dignified appearance. He was so perfect that he looked like a person in a painting. However, the words he spoke carried a sense of sharpness and sternness. Haha, eldest senior brother, how can this junior brother compare to you? You have to know that in the cultivation world, you are a genius with a rare heaven spirit root. Moreover, with the help of honored master, you used the only piece of profound heaven stone in the sect to refine this life artifact, the demon-slaying sword. With senior brother's strength, you can even fight against a foundation establishment cultivator. When the green-robed cultivator saw that the fire bull's attack was neutralized, he couldn't help but laugh at the white-robed youth. There was a trace of envy in his voice. His eldest senior brother was not an ordinary person. He had the heaven spirit root, one of the best cultivation aptitudes in the cultivation world. When he cultivated, his speed of cultivation would make most people die of shame. Moreover, not only was his aptitude extremely high, but that demon-slaying sword. Chapter 51. It was even more extraordinary. In this world, the magic tools used by cultivators could be divided into 3 levels: magic tools, magic treasures, and spirit treasures. Among them, magic tools were of the lowest grade and were suitable for low-level cultivators such as chi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators. However, their power far exceeded the limits of the secular world. As for magic tools, they were also divided into different grades. For example, low-grade magic tools, mid-grade magic tools, high-grade magic tools, and even top-grade magic tools that were comparable to magic treasures. The other grades were also divided in the same way. Logically speaking, in the immortal cultivation world, the number of magic tools was the highest. This was because lower-level cultivators usually had more magic tools than higher-level cultivators. Another reason was that the materials needed to refine magic tools were far too precious. Furthermore, one had to have a corresponding cultivation level. At the very least, one had to be at the core formation stage before they could start refining magic tools. Think about it, in this world, how many cultivators were able to cultivate to the core formation stage? The materials needed to refine magic treasures were even more precious. Often, a cultivator would only be able to find enough materials to refine one magic treasure in half a year. Thus, the value and rarity of magic treasures could be imagined. However, in this world, there was another way to refine magic treasures. That was to nurture a natal magic tool. What was a natal magic tool? It was a magic tool that was nurtured using one's own blood essence and fused with one's own essence, energy, and spirit. This kind of magic tool could be said to have an inseparable relationship with its owner. If the magic tool was destroyed, its owner would also suffer a great deal of damage. This kind of damage might be difficult to repair in a lifetime. The mystical and powerful aspects of a life origin magic tool made many people rush to nurture their own life origin magic tool. Firstly, the power of a life origin magic tool was often more powerful than a magic tool of the same level. In a battle in the cultivation world, even if it was just a little bit stronger, it would still be a great advantage. Secondly, the key to a life origin magic artifact was to nurture it. Nurture was to use one's own spiritual energy to continuously nourish the magic artifact, as well as collect various precious materials to fuse into the magic artifact. This way, the magic artifact could slowly become stronger and increase its own grade. If a low-grade natal immortal treasure was nurtured well, it could transform into a high-grade immortal treasure or even a supreme-grade immortal treasure. If one could find a certain precious material and fuse it, perhaps it could transform into a Dharma treasure in one fell swoop. And if the natal magic tool continued to be nurtured, it could transform into a natal spiritual treasure. It was this kind of limitless possibilities that made many cultivators scramble for this kind of practice of nurturing magic tools. Unfortunately, only a few cultivators were able to truly nurture magic tools. The demon-slaying sword was refined from profound heaven stone and various precious materials. It was then refined into a natal magic tool by the white-clothed youth. The materials used to refine this magic tool were too good. Once it was refined, it was already a top-grade magic tool. As long as he nurtured it carefully, it could definitely become a natal magic tool when he broke through to the core formation stage. My demon-slaying sword has a demon refining formation engraved by Master. After killing spirit beasts and demons, their souls will be swallowed into the sword and refined to increase the power of the demon-slaying sword. The more demons it kills, the stronger the demon-slaying sword will be. Watch me kill this fire bull. The white-clothed youth looked at the demon-slaying sword floating in front of him. His eyes revealed a look as if he was looking at the woman he loved. His fingers shot out and pointed at the demon-slaying sword. Buzz! In an instant, a slight tremor could be heard on the sword body. A snow-like sword light burst forth from the sword. Like a white chain, it instantly rolled towards Huanyo's neck. The sword ray was incomparably sharp. From afar, one could feel the cold air emitted from it, as expected of a top-grade natal magic tool. Its power was comparable to some low-grade magic tools. Roar! The fire bull's eyes were red. It let out a roar and its nostrils suddenly enlarged. Two crimson pillars of fire that were twice as thick as before shot out from his nostrils. They transformed into two solid fire serpents in front of him and rushed towards the sword light. Boom! This fire pillar was an innate ability of the fire bull. Its power was not weak at all. It was already close to the realm of a demon beast. It wouldn't take long for it to become a demon beast, and its strength would increase greatly. Then, its power would not be any weaker than a cultivator in the late stage of the chi refining stage. The fire pillar it spat out could burn a cultivator in the chi refining stage to ashes. Its power could be said to be quite great. However, when it collided with the sword light from the monster-slaying sword, the sword light was incomparably sharp. It didn't stop at all as it slashed a path through the pillar of fire. In the end, the sword light only dimmed slightly. Its direction didn't change as it quickly swept towards the fire bull's neck. Roar! The fire bull went crazy. Its eyes were so red that it was about to bleed. The bull lowered its head, and the two sharp horns on its head stood up. Its body moved forward and charged towards the sword ray. Boom! The horns were the hardest part of the bull's body. For a mutated beast like the fire bull, it was even harder. When it collided with the sword ray, there was a loud bang. The sword ray was immediately dispersed. However, the fire bull's body was also knocked back by this collision. Its 4 iron hooves drew 4 large marks on the ground. Humph! A mere spirit beast wants to struggle in front of my demon-slaying sword. Demons deserve to die. Go. When the white-clothed young man saw that the sword ray was unable to kill the fire bull, his face immediately turned cold. He pointed in front of him again. Buzz! Suddenly, the demon-slaying sword trembled again and burst out a sparkling sword ray. With endless deterrence, it directly used its body to slash at the fire bull. This time, no matter how hard the bull's horns were, they would be cut off. Roar! The fire bull felt the danger. Its iron hooves kept digging into the ground. A thick layer of red light appeared on the bull's horns on its head. It was about to charge forward like last time. Swoosh! At this moment, a pitch-black blade of light broke through the air without warning. With an incredible speed, it instantly slashed at the demon-slaying sword. Bang! The white-clothed young man was obviously not prepared for such an accident. The ancient sword that was originally going to slash at the fire bull was bombarded by the terrifying attack power contained in the blade of light. The sword trembled and emitted a soft sound. The ancient sword was blasted dozens of feet away. Who is it? The white-clothed young man's eyes instantly turned cold. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the blade of light. He reached out and grabbed the demon-slaying sword in his hand. He quickly swung the sword at the huge stone not far away. Immediately, countless sparkling and translucent sword lights whizzed toward the stone. Boom, boom, boom. The stone was just an ordinary stone. How could it withstand the power of the demon-slaying sword? It was immediately crushed by the sword rays. Roar! A tyrannical tiger's roar resounded in the valley without any warning. The tiger's roar shook the sky like a thunderclap, causing the entire valley to tremble violently. A pool in the valley exploded on the spot, and a water column soared to the sky, reaching a height of 30 feet. The sword rays that were rushing towards the sky bore the brunt of the impact and were directly shattered. After the stone was shattered, a gigantic black tiger appeared in front of them. This black tiger was incomparably huge, and its body emitted a majestic aura. It was the king of all beasts, and on its forehead there was a purple king mark that was like a flame, and it seemed to be alive. It looked breathtaking. An invisible pressure swept into the valley like a tidal wave. This black tiger was none other than Di Shirtion. He observed from the side for a while. In his heart, he had a general understanding of the situation in the valley. It should be that these two immortal cultivators killed the fire bull's child first. That was not enough. They even wanted to kill the fire bull. Although the conversation between the two was only a few words, he guessed a lot of things from it. The white-clothed youth was holding a powerful magic weapon. Moreover, this magic weapon could absorb the essence of all kinds of creatures and refine the power of the essence for the demon-slaying sword to absorb. It increased the power of the ancient sword. The matter was very obvious. These two immortal cultivators were obviously out to find those spiritual beasts with spiritual nature. Demon-slaying sword, slay demons. These two words had clearly stated their intentions. Immortal cultivators really have the attitude of killing strange creatures. This fire bull can spit out flames. It is a mutant among the spiritual beasts. Since I saw it, I can't let it be killed. If I take it under me, it can increase my strength. Almost in the blink of an eye, Yi Feng had already made up his mind and made a decision in his heart. Therefore, when he saw that the white-clothed youth was going to kill the firebull, his mind moved. Suddenly, a strong demonic aura emerged from his body and formed a demonic mist. Then, it quickly condensed into 10 sharp demonic mist blades. One of them, under his control, bombarded the demon-slaying sword on the spot and blasted it away. Hey, there is actually a spiritual beast here. What is this light blade? Is it its innate ability? The white-clothed youth's surname was Zhong Yunfei. His aptitude for immortal cultivation was top-notch. He was born in a small mountain village. When he was 8 years old, his parents were eaten by a spiritual beast that rushed out of the mountains. Fortunately, the cultivators of the High Heaven sect passed by and saved him. They also killed the spiritual beast. However, that experience caused him to hate demonic beasts. When he stepped onto the path of cultivation, he swore in his heart that as long as he succeeded in his cultivation, he would kill any demonic beast he met. He would kill all the demonic beasts in the world. His hatred for demonic beasts was obvious. Therefore, even the magic weapon in his hand was named Demon-Slaying Sword. Back then, my parents were eaten by a demonic tiger. Now, there is a black tiger here. Fine, today, I, Zhong Yunfei, will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you, this demonic tiger. Zhong Yunfei's eyes were cold. Please recommend me. I have a lot of recommendations and collections. Chapter 52. Senior Apprentice Brother, this black tiger is even more powerful than this firebull. My head is buzzing from its roar. We can't be careless. Just use the demon execution sword technique and kill it in one fell swoop. That junior brotherling shook his head. Just now, the tiger roar that Sakura let out was too sudden, and he simply didn't have the slightest bit of defense. On the spot, his head was buzzing and his complexion had turned pale. Zhong Yunfei's cultivation had reached the 10th layer of qi refining, while his was only at the 8th layer of qi refining. He was about to break through from the middle stage of qi refining to the late stage of qi refining. How could he resist the tyrannical tiger roar coming from Sakura's mouth? The roar caused his blood to boil and his face to turn pale. Junior Apprentice Brotherling, don't worry. It's just a demon tiger. It hasn't even become a demon beast yet. With the power of the demon execution sword, no matter how powerful it is, it won't be able to escape from my sword. Zhong Yunfei looked at Di Shirtian. He thought back to the time when he saw his parents die under the tiger's jaws. A layer of cold murderous intent appeared on his body. Sword fingers burst out from his right hand, and in a split second, the demon beheading sword soared into the sky. It trembled violently in midair, and a crisp sword hum was emitted from the sword body. The sparkling and translucent sword light spurted out several feet long, and within the sword light, there seemed to be a talisman that was about to fly out. It temporarily gave up on the fire bull at the side, and transformed into a sparkling and translucent sword that rolled towards Sakura. The demon execution sword was extremely fast. In a flash of white light, the sword had already appeared in front of Di Shirtian. Roar! Indra's eyes were cold as he stared at the demon-slaying sword. From this sword, he could feel a sense of danger that came from his soul. It was as though this sword had a restraining effect on him. Although this aura was still very weak, it still caused a deep sense of vigilance to rise in his heart. Destroy it! In an instant, Sakura had already made up his mind. He only saw that the 10 demonic mist blades that were revolving around his body trembled 3 times in a row. 3 pitch-black light blades broke through the air as if they were real. They respectively appeared at the places where the demon-slaying sword was going to pass through and collided with the ancient sword. Bang bang bang! The demonic mist blade was formed by Di-Shirtion continuously compressing and condensing his demonic chi. Although it seemed to be formed by formless demonic chi, when it was truly condensed, it was not inferior to a real blade in the slightest. Instead, it was sharper. Under his control, it could be used flexibly. The strength of its attack was definitely not below that of a celestial artifact of a cultivator. 3 blades in a row tore through the air and bombarded the demon-slaying sword. These 3 demon mist blades were not without care. 1 slashed at the center of the ancient sword, 1 blocked the ancient sword's swordlight, and the last one bombarded the ancient sword's hilt. The light blades did indeed blast my demon-slaying sword away the first time. However, did you think I wouldn't be prepared? Break for me! Zhong Yunfei had clearly predicted that Di-Shirtion would use the demonic mist blade to block his attack. When he saw the 3 light blades bombarding the ancient sword, his body trembled slightly. However, he still let out a soft shout. Buzz! The demon-slaying sword was Zhong Yunfei's natal magic artifact. Its grade was directly in the top tier of magic artifacts. Its power was not inferior in the slightest to a magic artifact refined by a core formation stage cultivator. When the demonic mist blade struck, the sword suddenly burst forth with a layer of sparkling and translucent sword light. An enormous amount of sword chi spewed out from the sword. Every strand was incomparably sharp. When it collided with the demonic mist blade, it actually shattered the 3 light blades on the spot. The sword chi was like a rainbow. It whistled as it swept towards Di-Shirtion. Roar! Di-Shirtion's mind trembled. He finally experienced the strength of immortal cultivators. The power of a magic artifact could be so great. It actually disintegrated the demonic mist blade in an instant with sword chi alone. However, although he was shocked, he was not afraid. His eyes became increasingly calm. He let out a low roar. Immediately, he saw the remaining 7 demonic mist blades flying up and down around him. They quickly drew streaks of light in the air. However, they didn't continue to rush towards the beheading demon sword. Instead, in front of Sakura, they collided together at the same time. Like liquid, the 7 demon mist blades actually fused together mysteriously at this moment. Almost in the blink of an eye, a waning moonlight blade that was no less than 5 to 6 meters in length formed in front of him. Slash! After the enormous demonic mist blade formed, it did not stop for even a moment and slashed towards the demon-slaying sword with a loud bang. Bang! The enormous blade formed by the 7 demonic mist blades was powerful. It was not as simple as a simple combination. Around the blade, threads of black chi were emitted. With one slash, a large amount of sword chi was shattered on the spot. When it hit the demon-slaying sword, an enormous amount of demonic chi poured out. The demon-slaying sword was directly thrown back by the slash. The sword's body was constantly trembling. The demon-slaying sword was a natal dharma artifact. This powerful attack also caused considerable damage to Zhong Yunfei. He let out a muffled groan and a trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, his hands did not stop. He quickly formed a sword seal and shouted, "Demon-slaying sword technique. Jade Lotus descends to dust, slaying evil." 1. Zhong Yunfei formed the sword technique. Immediately, he saw that the demon-slaying sword's body suddenly blazed with sword light. It was like a crystal sun. In this light, the ancient sword that was wrapped in it could no longer be seen. However, between heaven and earth, a vast pressure suddenly appeared. It was like a mountain. In this sparkling sword light, a strange scene appeared. Strands of sword light and sword chi transformed into jade lotuses of various sizes. They looked incomparably holy and gave off a miraculous power that could cleanse one's soul. There were dozens of jade lotuses, but the strange thing was that the monster-slaying sword itself had disappeared. After these jade lotus flowers appeared, they quickly arrived in the sky above the valley. The jade lotus flower petals bloomed and floated down one by one, sparkling like snow. However, the jade lotus flowers that had withered petals did not really lose all of their petals. Instead, after a piece fell, a new piece would immediately condense on the jade lotus flower, and in this way, the petals would continuously fall down. In the blink of an eye, the sky above the valley was covered by countless beautiful jade lotus flower petals. It was so overwhelming that it seemed as if it was a strange snowflake. The lotus flower petals floated down and landed on the fire bowl. Seeing this, the fire bowl let out a painful cry. A deep wound appeared on its back. Strands of sword chi continued to wantonly destroy its body. These jade lotus flower petals were actually formed by specially condensed sword chi. They had a strong destructive power. Moreover, the sword chi turned illusory, which greatly increased its lethality. Oh no, could this be the so-called sword technique of the immortal cultivators? It actually has such terrifying power. When Di Shirtian saw this scene, his heart suddenly contracted violently. He thought about the disappearance of the demon-slaying sword. With his wisdom, he immediately guessed that this should be the powerful sword technique of the immortal cultivators, turning illusions into reality, condensing the sword chi and sword light into substantial jade lotus petals. Such a method was rather terrifying. It had the same effect as Di Shirtian's demonic mist blade that was condensed from demonic chi. Clang! With a thought, the giant demon mist blade in front of him disintegrated and turned back into 7 demon mist blades. 3 of them instantly flew to the fire bowl's side and quickly danced around it, shattering the sparkling and translucent petals. However, when these petals were destroyed, they still burst forth with tyrannical sword chi and bombarded the demon mist blades. The light on the blades began to dim as they were worn down. However, the petals seemed to be endless, covering the sky and covering the earth as they continuously sprinkled down. It was likely that the demon mist blades would not be able to hold on for long before they were completely worn down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The petals were abnormally dense, as if it was snowing heavily. The light on the demon mist blades was being worn down at a speed visible to the naked eye. In almost no time, one of the demon mist blades that enveloped Di Shirtian's surroundings was destroyed on the spot by the sword chi that erupted from the petals. This caused a flaw in the defense around him to appear on the spot. The petals followed the trace and entered. Several sparkling and translucent petals quickly fell on Di Shirtian's back. Puff, puff, puff! Amidst the crisp sounds, the edges of the petals were abnormally sharp. They actually easily cut several hideous wounds on Di Shirtian's body that had long been strengthened countless times. Furthermore, the petals melted the moment they entered his body, turning into strands of sword chi that began to wantonly destroy his body. What a terrifying sword technique! I can't go on like this. Although I can condense the demon mist blades again, I can't go on like this. They will still be worn down by these strange petals. I'll waste my own demon chi for nothing and won't be able to reverse the current situation. When Di Shirtian saw this situation, he knew that if he did not have a way to break this strange sword technique, he was afraid that he would really be buried in this seemingly beautiful sea of flowers. It seems that only by using the tiger roar sound wave can I break this terrifying attack in one go. Whoosh! Di Shirtian's mind turned. He already understood that with his current ability, the only thing that could be useful was the tiger roar sound wave, this tyrannical sound wave attack. Immediately, without a trace of hesitation, he fiercely inhaled a breath of air in front of him. His entire huge body once again increased in size at a speed visible to the naked eye, becoming even more burly and tyrannical. The awe-inspiring tigers might swept out like a tide. The king mark on his forehead was really like a purple flame that pulsated, further accentuating his uniqueness. The tiger roar technique quickly circulated in his body. Waves of demon chi quickly rolled and surged towards his throat. The breath that he swallowed fiercely rushed out of his body. Roar! The tyrannical tiger's roar resounded in the valley. This tiger's roar was even more shocking than before. It was as if, in an instant, countless thunderbolts had struck down in the valley, causing the entire valley to shake violently. The surrounding rocks were shaken to pieces on the spot. The ferocious chi wave swept up bursts of fierce wind. Chapter 53. In the sky, a large number of jade lotus petals were forcibly dispersed by this tyrannical tiger roar. At the same time, ripples of pitch-black ripples visible to the naked eye continuously spread out in all directions with Di Shirtion as the center. Wherever the sound waves passed, snow-white petals were all shattered by the continuous sound waves. Not even the slightest trace of sword chi was left behind. Boom, boom, boom! The power of the sound waves was all-pervasive. More than half of Di Shirtion's demonic chi was poured into it, making it even more powerful. Moreover, the sound waves were endless, wave after wave. In this sea of sound waves, the petals were like rotten wooden raft. No matter how they struggled, they would still be shattered by the sound wave. This is a good opportunity. Let's take this opportunity to break this strange sword technique. Demonic mist blade, fuse, slash. Di Shirtion's body was filled with a dense tyrannical aura. He raised his head and looked at the dozens of jade lotus petals in the sky. He knew that these were the key to breaking the sword technique. Otherwise, even if he could destroy these petals, with them around, he could still create an endless supply of petals. Only by destroying these lotus petals could he truly break this sword technique. Clang! At this very moment, with a single thought, he saw the demonic mist blades fusing together again, condensing into a huge crescent moon blade. Under his control, the demonic mist blade drew a pitch-black blade light in front of him, instantly chopping down on the jade lotus. Bang, bang, bang! Under Di Shirtion's full control, the demonic mist blade erupted with its strongest power and cut several lotus petals in half. Then, the sound waves surged and shattered the lotus petals. Explode for me! At this time, Zhong Yunfei's voice suddenly rang out. The jade lotus petals suddenly rushed toward Di Shirtion, one after another, dauntlessly advancing. They completely ignored the sound waves and demonic mist blades and madly rushed toward Di Shirtion. Not good! Di Shirtion's heart sank. A thick layer of demonic chi gushed out from his body and covered his entire body. He quickly controlled the demonic mist blade to destroy the lotus petals one after another. However, it was very difficult to destroy these lotus petals. Moreover, they were rushing toward him. In this short period of time, he could only destroy most of them, but there were still 3 left. He broke through the sound waves' obstruction. The lotus petals had already dimmed, but when they got close to him, they suddenly exploded. Suddenly, a large number of lotus petals violently shot out, completely covering Di Shirtion's entire body under the attack. Roar! In an instant, boundless pain that pierced his heart, causing Di Shirtion to let out an even more tyrannical tiger roar. Of incomparable madness in his eyes, all of his demonic chi poured out of his body. The power of the sound waves instantly more than doubled. Calm, senior brother, I can't hold on any longer. A sharp scream rang out in the valley. The cultivator surnamed Ling's Vajra talisman had already been destroyed by the sound waves. The sound waves blasted his body, causing blood to flow out from his 7 orifices. His internal organs were shattered by the sound wave. He only had time to let out a cry for help before he died under the sound wave. Junior brother Ling. Zhong Yunfei saw his junior brother die under the sound wave attack, and his expression changed drastically. However, at this time, a pitch-black tiger claw suddenly pierced through the air and heavily bombarded his chest. A jade pendant on his neck shot out a ray of blue light and shattered the tiger claw. Even so, he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. The jade lotuses were all destroyed, and the demon-slaying sword suddenly appeared in midair. It fell down and landed in front of Zhong Yunfei. Zhong Yunfei looked coldly at Di Shirtian. With a flip of his hand, 2 talismans quickly stuck to his body. A gentle breeze appeared beside him, allowing him to fly into the air. Grabbing the demon-slaying sword, he turned and fled into the distance. Of the 2 talismans, one was a Wind Rider talisman, the other was a Divine Travel talisman. When the 2 were combined, it would allow a person to fly quickly in the air. Zhong Yunfei's personality was incomparably decisive. When he saw that his demon-slaying sword technique had been broken, he was severely injured, and he was hit by the tiger claw again. With such injuries, he definitely could not continue fighting. His junior brother had been killed. There was no point in staying here any longer. The only way to have a chance to turn the tables was to preserve his strength. Therefore, when he saw that the situation was hopeless, he made a prompt decision to withdraw and leave. Demon Tiger, just you wait. Sooner or later, I, Zhong Yunfei, will kill you with my demon-slaying sword. My junior brother's death must be avenged. I, Zhong Yunfei, swear that I will kill all demons in the world. Zhong Yunfei's speed was very fast. Di Shirtian watched him leave, but did not chase. He still stood majestically in the valley. When he could no longer see the other party, the demon aura that covered his body quickly retracted. Zhong Yunfei, I, Di Shirtian, will remember you. Sakra's body went soft and his huge tiger body laid on the ground on the spot. Looking at his body, there were large and small wounds all over his body. The number of wounds was simply a ghastly sight. Zhong Yunfei's strength was too strong, and that sword technique was a powerful attack that he had never seen before. The jade lotus exploded beside him, and countless petals fell on his body, adding countless wounds on the spot. There was also a large amount of sword chi that rushed into his body. If it wasn't for the fact that his body had been strengthened countless times, this attack would have easily shattered his body and cut him into countless pieces. However, he relied on his own willpower to support himself and did not fall. At the critical moment, he used the last of his demon aura to attack with his tiger claw. This was why Zhong Yunfei could not see through him and finally retreated in anger. However, there was no way that this hatred could be resolved. An immortal cultivator is actually so strong. He is far stronger than the few I have encountered before. His cultivation is obviously not higher than mine, but he can injure me to this extent. Di Shirtian thought to himself. Although he was surprised, he was not afraid. Instead, it aroused a strong fighting spirit. He also understood that perhaps this was the true genius and expert among the immortal cultivators. He was much stronger than ordinary immortal cultivators. I didn't expect that I would be seriously injured again when I had just recovered. This injury is even more serious than before. The most troublesome thing is that the sword aura that is wantonly destroying my body. He did not regret his actions this time. For him, what was done was done. Since he had decided to do it, there was no room for regret. As a demon in this life, he was destined to stand on the opposite side of the immortal cultivators. There was no room for compromise. Moreover, this time, while killing an immortal cultivator, he could also take in a subordinate and increase the strength of his side. Huanyo was now lying on the ground, gasping for breath. His body was dripping with blood. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. Howl! A high-pitched eagle cry sounded in the sky above his head. A gust of wind blew and a huge vulture descended from the sky. It quickly landed in front of Di Shirtian. King, you are injured. Are you okay? Kong saw Di Shirtian covered with terrible wounds and showed a trace of worry in his eyes. Unknowingly, Di had become their backbone. They really treated him as their king. "In Kong, my injuries are not serious for the time being. Immediately inform Yuan Tian and the others to bring all the clansmen forward and come to meet me. I just need to rest for a while, and I will be able to move again." Di Tian looked at Kong and quickly ordered, "Yes, King." Although Kong looked at him worriedly, he still took the order seriously. He immediately rose into the sky and informed Bai Yu and the others. If he wanted to heal, the essence refined from blood was undoubtedly the best kind of power. Previously, he was injured because he ate the flesh of the Centipede King. That was why he could quickly heal his injuries in a short time and make great progress in his demonic power. It was obvious that the importance of blood for demon cultivators was self-evident. Thinking of blood, Di Tian's eyes suddenly fell on the dead body of the cultivator not far away. With his sharp eyes, he naturally saw that there was also a storage bag beside the cultivator. In my previous life, I read a lot of myths and legends. Usually, monsters like to eat humans the most. They treat humans as food. Eating humans as food is better than eating animals. It can increase one's cultivation by a lot. Sakura thought in his mind. All along, he had been reincarnated as a human into a tiger. Although he had long known his identity and situation, it was impossible to have a complete relationship with humans. As the saying goes, humans eat animals and hunt animals. Animals eat humans, and it was the same. It could be considered as a matter of course. If humans can eat animals, why can't animals eat humans? He had understood this long ago. However, the thoughts of his previous life still had a deep impact on him. Therefore, he was still a little repulsed by eating humans. This was also why, when he killed people in the Tiger Hill Mountains, he left the corpses to Bai Yu and the others. A cultivator wants to kill me. Why can't I eat him? In this life, I am a demon. It is natural for me to eat humans. Today I will eat him. The body of an immortal cultivator must contain an enormous amount of spiritual essence. Di Tian's eyes became determined. He came to the cultivator's corpse, grabbed the storage bag, and put it aside. He opened his big tiger mouth and took a deep breath. Huff! In an instant, the huge tiger mouth produced a strong suction force. It enveloped the cultivator's corpse and directly pulled it into the mouth. The whole person was directly swallowed by him. The moment he swallowed, he felt a little nauseous. However, he still managed to suppress this feeling with his strong willpower. Lying on the ground, he quickly closed his eyes and silently began to operate the tiger roaring technique. The dried-up demon power in his body was slowly recovering. The surrounding power of heaven and earth quickly poured into his body through the meridians and countless pores. As Xiao Chun refined the food he swallowed, a huge amount of heat quickly rose in his body. Please vote, please add, if you have votes, please help me. I am already working hard to update. Chapter 54. What an enormous amount of spiritual essence! Di Tian could feel the spiritual essence rushing through his body. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He sighed inwardly. Man is born with a Taoist body and is blessed by the heavens. A cultivator at the 8th realm of Qi refining has such an enormous amount of spiritual essence. If I absorb it, my injuries will be healed. He couldn't help but be surprised. The spiritual essence contained in this cultivator's body was not inferior to the spiritual essence hidden in the giant centipedes he had eaten earlier, as well as the spiritual essence hidden in the flesh of the centipede queen. If he absorbed this spiritual essence, at least his injuries wouldn't be too serious. He didn't think too much about it. He closed his eyes and silently circulated his cultivation technique, slowly circulating the remaining demonic energy in his body through his meridians. Essence Qi rolled in his body and rushed into his meridians. Under the guidance of the demonic energy, it circulated for a few cycles before being refined into strands of demonic energy. This caused the originally exhausted demonic energy to be replenished with every cycle. All the pores on his body opened, and the spirit qi in the valley surged towards him, quickly entering his body through his pores and meridians. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black Yao Qi had already covered the surroundings. It was impossible to see anything in the demonic fog. Di Shirtian's powerful digestive system was fully demonstrated at this moment. A whole person was swallowed into his stomach. If someone could see the situation in his stomach, they would clearly see that the cultivator inside was melting at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into strands of spiritual essence. Part of the spiritual essence rose in his body and merged into his internal organs. Every inch of his flesh and blood made his body stronger. In the demonic fog, Di Shirtian's countless wounds caused by the sword energy were healing at an astonishing speed under the nourishment of the spiritual essence. The wounds on both sides of his body seemed to have a life of their own. They wriggled on their own and slowly connected together, completely recovering to their original state. The only thing that troubled Di Shirtian was the sword qi that had rushed into his body. It was abnormally stubborn. Moreover, it was like two sworn enemies with the demonic force. When they collided, a powerful destructive force would erupt, wanting to fight to the death with the demonic force. Although Di Shirtian personally controlled the demon power to refine the sword qi bit by bit, the pain caused by the refining process was far beyond what an ordinary person could endure. Boom, boom, boom! As Di Shirtian was absorbing the essence energy produced by the refinement of the cultivators, Kong went to notify him and led the way up in the sky. Every so often, the ground would rumble and the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard coming from outside the valley. It sounded as though a large group of wild beasts were running furiously. The tremors shook the earth. Eagle Kong, King is injured, how can you leave? You should stay by King's side and protect him. What if something happens while King is injured? Bai Susu shouted. That's right, Eagle Kong. If King is injured because of this negligence, I, Yuan Tian, will not let you go. Yuan Tian's rough voice rang out. We've reached the valley. Everyone, stay here. The four of us will go in quickly. Bai Yue shouted. With a whoosh, he rushed in from outside the valley. Soon after, the other leaders rushed in as well. Their first reaction after entering was to quickly scan the valley with their eyes. When they saw that there was a place in the valley that was shrouded by a thick black fog, their eyes immediately brightened. They quickly rushed to the front of the black fog. Without saying anything, the four of them directly stood in four directions, tightly guarding the black fog in the middle. Having witnessed Di Shirtian's cultivation, they naturally knew that the person in the black fog was their king. All of them opened their eyes wide and scanned their surroundings with gleaming eyes. They didn't let go of even the slightest movement. Of course, Huanyo, who was still lying on the ground in the valley, didn't escape their sight. Huanyo was also severely injured. The wounds on his body weren't any less than Di Shirtian's. However, under the coagulation of the blood, the wounds were no longer bleeding. Lying on the ground, Huanyo's eyes revealed a kind of gloomy luster. It was incomparably dim, as if it had lost its life. The only thing that told them that he was still alive was the grief in his eyes. This was already a very human expression. It was obvious that his intelligence and spirituality were not below that of Bai Yu and the other three leaders. Did King get injured because he wanted to save him? Bai Susu looked at Huanyo with a hint of hostility. In her opinion, the reason why the king was injured was entirely because of this fire bowl. Bai Yu glanced at Huanyo and said, Bai Susu, Huanyo might be on our side. Wolf King had been by Sakra's side since the beginning. Along the way, he naturally knew that for all the spiritual beasts that could be subdued, King spared no effort to bring them under his command. Looking at the current situation, he realized that Huanyo might become their brother. Yes. Kong and Yuan Tian nodded involuntarily when they heard that. Clearly, they agreed with Wolf King's opinion. Whoosh! Under the protection of the four leaders, 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, the demonic fog that hadn't changed all this while started to surge violently. Bai Susu and the others were delighted when they saw that. Under their watchful eyes, the demonic fog only surged for a while before it quickly gathered in the center. It was as if gas had suddenly expanded and then started to contract in the next instant. In the blink of an eye, the demonic mist dissipated completely. Then, a huge body stood in the middle of the demonic mist. It was a black tiger. The black tiger's body was abnormally huge. It was at least twice the size of an ordinary tiger. The tiger's might was awe-inspiring, and a powerful domineering aura was constantly being emitted from the purple king mark on its forehead. It intimidated all living beings. The black tiger was none other than Di Shirtian. When he opened his eyes and saw Bai Susu and the others standing guard around him, his heart sank. Bai Yuan Tian, did you bring the rest of your tribesmen with you? King, the rest of our tribesmen are outside the valley. Only the 4 of us entered the valley to protect you. King, how are your injuries? Bai Susu asked hesitantly. She stared at Di Shirtian with widened eyes. My injuries are no longer a problem. I can't stay here any longer. Get out of here and gather the troops. We'll leave this place immediately. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed. He didn't know if Zhong Yunfei would call for reinforcements after escaping. The sooner they left, the safer they would be. Bai Yu and the others saw this and left the valley to gather their troops. In an instant, only Di Shirtian and the half-dead Huanyo were left in the valley. There's nothing sadder than a dead heart. When Di Shirtian saw the look in the Huanyo's eyes, he understood why the Huanyo was like this. With intelligence, it cared about more things. For example, it cherished and loved its own children more. The Huanyo's little Huanyo had already died under Zhong Yunfei's demon-slaying sword. It also fought a battle with cultivators like Zhong Yunfei and the others. It understood that there was no hope for revenge. As soon as his hope was extinguished, a feeling of sadness and despair arose in his heart. Disregard for life. That was why it had that look in its eyes. Huanyo, I saved you because I saw your talent and wanted to take you under me. Now it seems that what I saved is just a waste. Di Shirtian came in front of the Huanyo and looked at it coldly. He said without any trace of politeness, I don't accept waste. If you still want revenge, get up yourself and follow me. I will give you strength. After saying those words, Di Shirtian did not say anything else. Without the slightest reluctance, he turned around and walked towards the outside of the valley. His footsteps were rather steady, as if he did not care about Huanyo's life or death, or even whether it would follow him. Just like that, he left the valley. How? The gloomy look in the Huanyo's eyes suddenly began to dissipate. Replacing it was a deep hatred and burning expectation. Its eyes began to have the color of hope. With a low roar, the Huanyo struggled to stand up from the ground. The wounds on its body, which had already coagulated, cracked again. Blood flowed out from the wounds. Its forelegs were a little weak because of excessive blood loss, but the Huanyo didn't care. Its eyes stared at the direction Di Shirtian left. Looking again at the little Huanyo, which had been shattered into countless pieces by the sword chi behind it, its hatred was even deeper. Step by step, he moved his body and firmly followed the direction of Sakra's departure. There was hatred between humans. In order to take revenge, they could endure all kinds of pain. But among animals, hatred was remembered more deeply. It was more unforgettable. Outside the valley, the migration team began to move again, moving forward at a fast pace. Di Shirtian was outside the valley, but when the Huanyo stood up again, there was a trace of approval in his eyes. He believed that as long as the Huanyo stood up, in the future, there would be one more powerful helper by his side. Hatred was often a powerful catalyst in cultivation. It would greatly accelerate the speed of cultivation. Strength. Powerful strength. Di Shirtian silently warned himself in his heart. If he didn't have powerful strength, it would be difficult for him to take even a single step in the southern barbaric mountain range. This time, what really made him feel like he had gained something was that when he swallowed that cultivator, he discovered that the blood essence and essence chi in the cultivator's body was really quite enormous. After swallowing him, he had absorbed almost 50% of the enormous power in the body of the 8th level chi refining cultivator. This 50% was also quite enormous. It was equivalent to 50% of the cultivator's cultivation when he was alive. This caused the enormous injuries to his body to be completely healed in a short period of time. This won't do. Right now, I'm only a demon. I don't have the ability to open up a demon manor. I can only extract 50% of the essence chi hidden in the blood food. I can't do anything about the remaining 50% and will have to waste it. If I open up a demon manor and become a demon beast, I'll be able to absorb 70% of the essence chi from the blood food. Chapter 55. For a monster like Di Shirtian, if he wanted to absorb blood food, the essence would naturally come quickly and directly. However, if he wanted to completely absorb the power and essence contained in the blood food, with his current ability, it was undoubtedly a fool's dream. It was completely impossible. It was known from the bloodline inheritance that he had obtained. Before being promoted to a monster, if he absorbed blood food to cultivate, he could only absorb 50% of the power in the blood food, which was already very impressive. Of course, 50% was under the best circumstances. For example, Di Shirtian could only reach 50% if he consciously absorbed as much as possible. If it were other spirit beasts, such as the centipede queen, they could only absorb about 20% or 30%, but the difference between individuals was different. After transforming into a monster, the best situation was that they could absorb 70% of the essence and power in the blood food. If they went one step further and condensed an inner core, they could really transform into a monster. Then they could absorb 90% of the essence and power in the blood food. Therefore, although they swallowed the cultivator this time, they only absorbed 50% of the essence and power in his body. However, this 50% was already extremely large. Moreover, Di Shirtian could clearly feel that after the essence and blood of the cultivator merged with his flesh and blood, it could make his physical body stronger. It seemed to be able to increase his own potential and foundation. Potential was something that could not be seen. It existed in the body, but could not be truly shown. It was like the spiritual root in the body of a cultivator. The quality of the spiritual root represented their respective potential and aptitude for cultivation. Now, Di Shirtian found that the essence and blood of a cultivator seemed to be able to improve his own aptitude and potential, and increase his foundation. He had a feeling that such a change should be good, and it might allow him to go further and faster on the road of cultivation. No wonder monsters like to eat people. Di Shirtian now began to understand why monsters in ancient myths always liked to capture people to eat. Perhaps this was one of the reasons. His thoughts were slightly absent-minded for a moment and the team had already started moving. Taking a look at the valley again, a crimson flaming bull was walking out of the valley step by step. When it saw Sakura, its gaze became fervent. Di Shirtian didn't say much. He turned around and walked into the migration team. Although Huanyo was injured, he followed closely behind the team. Along the way, he waded through mountains and rivers. They passed through a large forest. Along the way, they encountered several dangers, but under Di Shirtian's vigilance, they resolved them one by one. In the blink of an eye, they had traveled for another 8 days. During these 8 days, it was worth mentioning that on the 3rd day after Huanyo followed them, Di Shirtian finally met him. He took him under his seat. Huanyo's strength could be said to be the strongest among Di Shirtian's 5 subordinates. His ability to spit out fire pillars was simply invincible when compared to Bai Yu and the others. Based on strength, Huanyo became the strongest of the 5 leaders. Di Shitian named him Qihua. In the valley, Di Shitian had saved him. Now, he had given him hope for revenge. From the moment he walked out of the valley, he was incomparably loyal to Di Shitian. At this moment, Sakura and Ing Kong were standing on top of a tall mountain peak. The mountain peak was tall and steep, at least a few hundred meters high. Standing on top of the mountain peak, a gust of wind blew, causing the king's mark on Sakura's forehead to fluctuate unceasingly. It was vivid and lifelike, and an imposing aura spread out in all directions. The mountain peak was very steep, but for them it wasn't difficult to climb up. Their gazes weren't on the mountain peak below them. Instead, they raised their eyes and looked ahead. In front of them was a vast and endless mountain range. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of miles long it was. Inside, there were towering mountains and dense forests. With a slight estimate, the size of this mountain range was simply unknown. Compared to Tiger Hill Mountain Range, it was simply unimaginable. It could be said to be 10 times or 100 times larger. The mountain range was shrouded in a layer of fog. It made people unable to clearly see the scenery of the entire mountain range. As the saying goes, people have appearances, and mountains have appearances. If a person's appearance was strange, then he would definitely be gifted and absolutely not an ordinary person. It was the same for mountains. If a mountain had an unusual aura, then it would definitely not be an ordinary mountain. At this time, there was fog rising in the sky above the mountain range, blocking people's sight. Obviously, this fog was automatically released by the mountain range. Just based on this point, one could clearly guess that this mountain range was not simple. Ing Kong, the southern barbaric mountain range, is in front. Although Di Shitian asked, his tone was quite certain. After walking for so many days, they finally saw traces of the southern barbaric mountain range. It had to be said that in his heart, he let out a huge sigh of relief. They finally arrived safely. King, the southern barbaric mountain range, is in front. Compared to our Tiger Hill mountain range, this place is much bigger. In the past, I flew a big circle, but I couldn't fly from one end to the other. Seeing the continuous mountain range, traces of excitement shot out from Ing Kong's eyes. Obviously, his heart was instantly excited. Di Shitian said, "The southern barbaric mountain range is very big. However, being big means that there will definitely be a large amount of spirit beasts and demonic beasts living in the mountain range. It will be very dangerous to rashly enter." Now that they had arrived, they only needed to walk for half a day to arrive in front of the southern barbaric mountain range. However, after all, he was not familiar with the mountain range, so he did not want to rashly enter. That would be extremely dangerous. Ing Kong, you said in the past that you found a large valley in the southern barbaric mountain range. Can you still find it now? When he asked this, Di Shitian's tone was quite cautious. This was related to their future development in the mountain range, so they had to be cautious. When Ing Kong heard this, he nodded heavily and said, "King, this subordinate has always remembered the location of the valley. It's very hidden and very big. It can completely accommodate us." He answered without hesitation and was very certain. That year, when he was flying in the sky above the mountain range, there was also fog on the mountain range that blocked his line of sight, causing him to be unable to clearly see the things below from the sky. However, for some unknown reason, a large amount of the fog suddenly dissipated at that time, allowing him to clearly see the scene below. At that time, he discovered the large valley and attentively memorized the location of the valley, thinking that he would return to the valley in the future to take a look. Until now, he still had a deep impression of it. In the sky above the mountain range, he could find the location of the valley with a single glance. It was in a place slightly to the east. You have the advantage of flying in the sky. Bai Yu and I will first settle down here. You lead your clan to the valley you mentioned and see if you can find the location of the valley. Moreover, you have to properly scout the situation inside the valley. Tion only pondered for a moment before giving out his orders. Stability, what they needed now was stability. With regards to the southern barbaric mountain range, they were still considered outsiders and knew too little about the matters inside the mountain range. It was not advisable to rashly enter. Now, they could only let Kong and the others use their advantage in the sky to scout ahead first. If they could find the valley, they would naturally set off in the direction of the valley. They should settle down in the valley early, then slowly familiarize themselves with everything in the mountain range. Otherwise, they could only use that slightly riskier method. Lead a large group of people first and then decide what to do after entering and surviving at the edge of the mountain range. If that was the case, there would be too many variables. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Tion did not want to make this choice. Yes, King. Kong spread his wings and flew high into the sky, letting out a high-pitched eagle cry. Immediately, not far away, countless cries echoed. A huge group of eagles flew over from afar and gathered with Kong, then turned and flew towards the southern barbaric mountain range. They were preparing to scout out the path. They also led the rest of the large group to follow in. Looking at the group of eagles gradually disappearing into the distance, Tian's gaze still fell onto the southern barbaric mountain range. The southern barbaric mountain range has a vast area that is enough for me to develop in the early stages. If it's possible, if I'm able to subdue all the forces within the entire mountain range, then I'll even have the strength to fight against the sects of the cultivation world. His gaze was incomparably deep. In his eyes, the southern barbaric mountain range would be his starting point. It was the best place to accumulate strength and increase strength. This place would be an excellent whetstone that would be able to temper the forces beneath him. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I conquer this mountain range. A strong domineering aura arose within his heart, and the natural domineering aura of the King of Beasts was undoubtedly evident. In his heart, this place would not be the end, but a starting point. He stood on the mountain peak for quite a while before decisively turning around and leaping down the mountain. He still had many urgent matters to attend to. He had to cultivate his own cultivation to the peak as soon as possible. After a period of time, when he entered the mountain range, he would help his 5 subordinates by his side embark on the path of demonic cultivation and teach them cultivation technique. Although what he cultivated was the tiger roar technique that was tailor-made for him, the early stages of demonic cultivation were all the same. For beasts, they all had to open up the meridians within their bodies and circulate demonic energy throughout their entire bodies. This process was basically the same, but there would be some differences due to the difference in species. Among them, the one that was truly troublesome might be by Susu. Because she was a reptile, she had no legs, and a single tendon ran through her body to the end. Tion hadn't personally examined her before, so he didn't know what would be the difference between him and a snake demonic cultivator. However, he believed that the difference wouldn't be too great. He quickly ran down the mountain at an extremely fast speed, causing a fierce gale to swirl around him. Wherever he ran past, the gale would also follow closely behind. Not long after, he arrived at the foot of the mountain. Boom! He came to an abrupt stop, and the gale around him immediately swept up a few apes and threw them out in all directions. Among the various species, apart from the eagle flock, the other 3 species had more or less suffered some casualties during the migration due to various accidents. The victors were eliminated, and the ones left now were the strongest and most robust of the species. Damn, today is the 1st of May. I wish everyone a happy holiday. Chapter 56. King! Seeing Tion coming down from the mountain, a snow-white wolf, a huge white python, and a golden ape with long golden fur surrounded him at the same time and respectfully said to him, "Let the clansmen hunt nearby. Everyone must eat their fill. Before the sun sets, we must reach the southern barbaric mountain range and enter the mountain range. We've reached our destination." Tion looked at the spirit of the clansmen. After almost half a month of trekking, as well as various dangers along the way, the physiques of those who could reach this far were many times stronger than before. With just a glance, he could feel the dense wildness and valiance from them. If they were compared to before, they would definitely be able to face twice the number of enemies and still win. Therefore, this migration wasn't without benefit. At least, these clansmen were trained. "King, are we almost at the southern barbaric mountain range?" Hearing this, Baisusu coiled her body and blinked her big eyes. She asked with curiosity and joy. During this period of time, the southern barbaric mountain range was undoubtedly a direction that supported their will. Now that they were here, they were naturally overjoyed. "Yes. In another half a day's time, we'll reach the outside of the mountain range. Just now, I had In Kong lead the group of eagles to scout and find the valley he mentioned before. We'll rest here for a while before setting off. When we reach the mountain range, I believe In Kong will already have news." Tion looked at Baisusu indifferently. "Susu, you go and prepare as well. The southern barbaric mountain range isn't like our Tiger Hill. We don't know anything about the situation inside, so we must be careful." "Yes." Baisusu nodded her big head. After a month of continuous hunting and guarding in the vicinity, these things had long since become a tacit understanding. It didn't take long for all the clansmen to finish eating and drinking 2 hours later, and they once again stood up and rushed towards the southern barbaric mountain range. Perhaps it was because they were about to arrive, but their speed this time was much faster. Along the way, all kinds of trees and sceneries were left behind. This place was even more desolate than Tiger Hill. There were no signs of human habitation anywhere. It was a primeval area that was completely preserved and untouched by humans. There were many places that were very dense. However, to them, the mountain forest was like their home. How could it stop them? Instead, he was like a fish in water as he quickly walked forward. Finally, after walking for several hours, the sun in the sky had slowly set in the west. Tion and his party had already appeared in front of a huge mountain range. "Wow, what a huge mountain range! It's even bigger than Tiger Hill." Baiwa Wolf King raised his head and looked ahead. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide in amazement at the things in front of him. "This is the southern barbaric mountain range. Great, we're finally here." Baisusu also opened her eyes and constantly looked around curiously. "Who?" Sakura stood at the edge of the mountain range and took a deep breath towards the forest. With this breath, he could clearly feel that this mountain range was indeed very different from the other forests. When he was at Tiger Hill, when he breathed in, he could indeed feel that the air here was countless times better and fresher than in his previous life. Breathing here was incomparably comfortable. However, breathing here wasn't just comfortable. Moreover, as he breathed, faint traces of spirit chi in the air entered his body. Although there wasn't much spirit chi, this kind of situation was enough to thoroughly shock people. No wonder there are so many spirit beasts and monsters in the southern barbaric mountain range. I finally understand. From the air here, Tion finally guessed why the southern barbaric mountain range would become the place where most spirit beasts gathered in the secular world. Not to mention anything else, just the air alone was enough to figure it out. Even when he breathed in naturally, the air that entered his body contained traces of spirit chi. This spirit chi entered his body along with the air. Then, it naturally merged with his body. It could be said that in this kind of environment, even if an ordinary animal lived for a long time, it would continuously absorb the spirit chi in the air every day and accumulate it in its body. As long as it could survive, It wouldn't need more than a few years to give birth to spirituality and become a spirit beast. No matter how stupid they were, the strength of their bodies would be who knew how much stronger than the animals outside. The southern barbaric mountain range was simply blessed by the heavens. Good. In this kind of environment, cultivating will definitely be faster. I'm going to open up my demon palace and cultivate into a monster beast. The days won't be too long. Shirtyan's two tiger eyes emitted traces of sharp light. Comparing this place to Tiger Hill, it was simply the difference between heaven and earth. In cultivation, money, companions, land, and spells were all indispensable. The quality of the cultivation location was a factor that directly affected one's cultivation. Roar! In the sky, a bald eagle with golden feathers on its head let out a resounding eagle cry. After circling a few times in the air, it saw Shirtyan's group outside the mountain range. The light in its eyes immediately brightened and it quickly circled down. King, this subordinate has found the valley. The one who came was Inkong. As soon as he landed, he immediately shouted excitedly. Good! When Shirtyan heard this, he couldn't help but let out a ball of light. He looked at Inkong and said, Inkong, you've done a great service this time. I'll remember this for now and reward you later. Where is the valley? Hurry up and lead the way. The number of animals in their group was not an ordinary large number. Hundreds of thousands of animals gathered outside the mountain forest. If it was a short time it would be fine, but if it was a long time it would attract some attention. Entering the mountain range was already an urgent matter. King, this subordinate can't lead the way. There is a thick fog above the mountain range. If we enter the mountain, you won't be able to see us. Inkong said hesitantly. Above the mountain range there was a thick fog all year round. There was no way to see the scene below. Similarly, if one entered the mountain range, it would be difficult for the creatures inside to see the outside. Inkong and the others flew in the sky. If they could not see their figures, it would be difficult to accurately determine the direction. When Shirtyan heard this, his eyes revealed a thoughtful look. This was indeed not a small problem. However, he was not an ordinary spirit beast after all. He had the wisdom of a human and the experience of his previous life. In the blink of an eye, a solution appeared in his mind. He looked up at Inkong. This is easy. You take your group and fly into the sky first. From here, line up, connect to the valley, and then, from the sky, land in the mountain range. Use the signs to guide the way. As long as there is a general direction, every certain distance, there will be an eagle in front as a sign. We will be able to get a clear direction. Shirtyan's method was like a buoy. The group of eagles lined up in a line, and then according to their position, they landed in the mountain range together. This became a living guiding light. When Inkong heard this, his eyes immediately lit up. The more he listened, the more excited he became. King, this subordinate understands. I will arrange it immediately. Eagle Sky flew into the sky and gathered his own group of eagles. They flew into the mountain range and lined up in a row. Then, they flew all the way to the valley. Then, they all landed at the same time. They passed through the thick fog and landed in the mountain range. Go! Let's go in. Shirtyan took the lead and was the first to enter the mountain range. Perhaps it was because the spiritual energy here was much denser than other places. The flowers and trees here were not only beautiful, but also towering ancient trees. They were quite large, and each of them exuded an ancient aura. Every living thing contained a strong life force. Howl! After entering the mountain, Shirtyan's sharp tiger eyes scanned the area. He saw a strong bald eagle standing on a big tree not far ahead. When it saw Shirtyan, it immediately let out a cry to guide the way forward. Chapter 57. After searching carefully a few times and finding nothing, he could only hide this vague feeling in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, he raised his entire mind completely. His eyes shot out a bright light as he constantly scanned the surroundings, fearing that the slightest accident would happen. It wasn't easy to come to the southern barbarian land. He didn't want to be completely annihilated as soon as he came in. As he walked, he was secretly vigilant. Under the guidance of the live road signs of the group of eagles, he moved forward quickly. The clansmen who followed him all tacitly didn't make too much noise, and only focused on hurrying forward. But behind him, that obscure gaze was still there. In fact, de Chertien's feeling wasn't wrong. It was just that when he used his demon sense to scan, he only observed the ground and the surroundings. He never thought that the place where his gaze appeared wasn't in the air or the surroundings, but underground. He saw that not far from the migration team, there was a small hole in the ground. From the hole, 2 alert gazes shot out, scanning the huge migration team back and forth. This was why de Chertien always felt that there was a gaze around him. His current cultivation was still too weak. Even if his demon sense was far stronger than other spiritual beasts because of his reincarnation, after all, his demon sense couldn't go through transformation before he was promoted to a demon beast. What he could scan was only in the sky and the surroundings. As for the underground, with his current demon sense, he couldn't penetrate and scan the situation underground at all. Squeak, squeak. In the underground hole, there was a huge rat that was twice the size of an ordinary rat. This huge rat stared at the migration team with its 2 small eyes. Hiding underground, the place it was in was quite hidden. Even if a person was very careful, if they didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to find it. As everyone knew, rats were a race with the most tenacious vitality and extremely strong reproductive ability in this world. Even in the harshest environment, they would have a way to survive. Their numbers were so huge that no one could really count them. Even in the southern barbarian mountain range, there were still traces of them. Looking at the migration team rushing forward quickly, the huge rat quickly jumped into the hole. The huge rat hurriedly burrowed into the hole and quickly waved its claws in the direction of de Chertien and the others. The speed at which it dug the hole was amazing. As they dug and drilled, the speed at which they moved underground was not slower than the speed of the migration team above. They followed closely behind de Chertien. The southern barbaric mountain range was very large. The various trees and flowers here were all rather different from the outside. However, de Chertien didn't have the leisure to look at the scenery. He only brought by you and the others and quickly traversed through the mountain forest. If he didn't stop for a moment, he might be in danger if he stayed for a few more minutes when he wasn't familiar with the surroundings. Now, what he hoped for the most was to reach the valley as soon as possible. Howl! A piercing eagle's cry quickly sounded out. The eagle descended from the sky and looked around. The illusion had already turned dark. They had been on the road for a few hours. Day and night alternated and it was already night time. King, let's rest here for the night and continue our journey tomorrow, Inkong said. Yes, King, the clansmen are very tired now. If we don't rest, we won't be able to make it for long, Baiyu also agreed. Running at high speed for a few hours in a row was definitely a high-intensity movement for ordinary beasts. The consumption of physical strength was quite large. If it wasn't for the previous training, the running this time would have made them collapse. Okay, then let's rest here for the night. We have to arrange a night watch tonight. Baiyu, the 5 of you, take turns to watch in pairs. Tonight, you must not relax at all. Sakra's heart sank slightly as he tried to sense it once again. He discovered that the gaze that he felt earlier was still like a parasite, appearing all around him. This gave him a rather bad feeling. His group was being watched. The key was that he couldn't find the location of the other party. Rustle, rustle! Not far away, in a small hole, the big rat turned its vigilant little eyes. After seeing that de Chertien and the others had stopped, It turned around and quickly went back into the hole it dug. Following its gaze, one could see a rather shocking scene. Underground, there were intersecting passages that led in all directions. It was like the roads in modern cities. There were everywhere, and it was a shocking sight. In these passages, there were fat rats going back and forth. They were carrying all kinds of things, including pieces of fresh animal meat. In the largest passage, the rats dug out strange stones that were half the size of a fist. This place was like an independent underground world. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, they would never believe it. The big rat quickly shuttled through the passages. Not long after passing through a passage, its eyes suddenly opened up. It was a rather vast space, a hollow karst cave that could accommodate thousands of people. In this karst cave there were strong rats guarding it. In the middle, there was a throne made of strange wood. On top of it, there was a rat that was as big as a 7- or 8-year-old child. This rat was brown all over, and its long whiskers were like steel needles. It was a terrifying sight to behold. King, I have something to report." The big rat rushed in and quickly came to the front of the Rat King, squeaking. "What is it?" "If it's not important, I'll eat you if you disturb my sleep." The Rat King was obviously sleeping just now. When it was awakened, it opened its eyes, and there was an ominous glint in its eyes. It was obviously in a bad mood. "King, I found out that outsiders have entered the mountain range. I've already grasped their whereabouts. There is a black tiger that is as strong as you, King, and 5 spirit beasts that are about the same as me." When the big rat saw the glint in the Rat King's eyes, it immediately felt cold and its body trembled. It hurriedly told the Rat King everything it had seen. "Outsiders, and there are others whose strength is not inferior to mine." When the Rat King heard this, it was immediately interested. The ominous glint in its eyes continued to flicker. After a while, it said, "Immediately lead a group of rat soldiers to follow them. These outsiders have been rushing since they entered the mountain. They must have a place to go. When they reach their destination, they will start to relax. I'll then lead my rat army to kill them and eat a spirit like me. I'll definitely be able to turn into a monster." "Congratulations, King!" When the big rat heard this, it hurriedly cried out, "Squeak, squeak!" This was actually a Rat King that was at the peak of a spirit. It was also a powerhouse that was about to start transforming into a monster. For ordinary spirits, although they were born with spiritual intelligence, they did not know how to cultivate. Therefore, it was even more difficult for them to cultivate. Most of them unconsciously absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around them and devoured the power of blood and food in order to increase their strength quickly. When they reached the peak of a spirit, they did not know how to open up a demon mansion. They could only use an even greater power to stimulate it, allowing the power to open up a demon mansion in their body. Therefore, this required a huge amount of external power to act as a catalyst. For example, by devouring a spirit of the same level as themselves, they could use the most ferocious power to break through in one fell swoop by absorbing the huge amount of essence in their body. During the rampage, they would naturally open up a demon mansion in their body. This method was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, they would be overwhelmed by the surging power in their body and explode on the spot. Therefore, there were only 2 results. One was to successfully open up a demon mansion and naturally transform into a monster. The other was to self-destruct on the spot and shatter into pieces. Complete death. When the big rat received the order, it led a group of rat soldiers and reappeared near Tion and the others. It had been following them closely from underground. Although they had the guidance of the group of eagles, Tion and the others continued to rush forward at the fastest speed. When they arrived at the valley mentioned by Kong, it was already the morning of the 3rd day. "Kong, are you mistaken? This is clearly a mountain. Where is the valley?" When Tion saw the scene in front of him, his heart couldn't help but sink. His tiger eyes burst out with a threatening light as he stared at Kong's eyes. In front of him was not a valley, but a towering mountain. This mountain was a little strange. It was slightly different from other places. There were no flowers, plants, or trees growing on it. It was all bare big rocks, and it was very steep. However, regardless of whether this mountain was steep or not, what was in front of them was definitely not a valley. The difference between a mountain and a valley was not something that De Chertion could not even distinguish. King! This subordinate does not dare to lie to King. The valley is behind the mountain. Kong was suppressed by De Chertion's aura. His 2 legs went soft and he lay on the ground, but he still said with certainty, "The valley is behind the mountain?" De Chertion was slightly stunned. "Then how do we go in? Do we have to go over this mountain?" This was obviously impossible. He could go over, but the other tribes were just ordinary beasts. They definitely did not have the ability to go over. This was obviously not advisable. Hiss! At this moment, the snakes around Bai Susu started hissing. Hearing this, Bai Susu's eyes lit up. She walked up to De Chertion and said, "King, I found it. I have found the passage to the valley." De Chertion did not have the time to bicker with Kong. He quickly asked Bai Susu, "Where is it?" This question concerned whether or not they could enter the valley. Otherwise, they would be blocked out by the mountain, and their efforts would be in vain. It was not worth it at all. Bai Susu said, "King, my tribesmen have just found a narrow crack at the bottom of this mountain. A new week is about to begin. Brothers, give me all your votes. Let's rush to the next week." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.